Welcome to this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters, the podcast we chart the cinematic legacy of the classic monsters. I'm John Campbell. With me, as always, Brendan Jones.
John Campbell, and hello, listeners. I want to suck your blood. I just feel that we let down our monster fan listeners. We don't include enough throwaways like that.
Yeah.
You know, so that they know, listen to a monster podcast. And I'm sorry also that if I spooked anybody.
Yeah.
I really didn't want to do that. I know.
Yeah. No,
especially if you're driving, really sorry about that.
Yeah. Keep it in your lane, folks. This week on the show is a little bit, we're finishing this season strong, and let's be honest, this season of the show has been a rough one. It's really been some ups and downs.
With some highlights here and there, and some surprising highlights, but a lot of dreck, sadly.
Yeah.
A lot of dreck.
So, as we close out the 1970s, as we land on yet another TV movie, it's nice to be rewarded with one of quality.
It is indeed. We get, for one thing, excellent source material.
That helps.
We get a very decent adaptation when you have to factor in TV censorship and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
A very decent adaptation of the script. But we also have Tobe Hooper at the helm, so come on.
That makes a gigantic difference. Much like and we were just talking about this beforehand, because we're talking about 1979 Salem's Lot, and I think that's the big thing that separates this and The Night Stalker from so much of the other things. These are so well directed. They're well written, well acted too, but these are people actually trying to make something of cinematic quality on a TV budget, as opposed to so many of the other things just look so TV.
It's true, and this thing, at this point, the only thing holding this back from being one of the all-time classics is the budget and the censorship.
Yeah.
Because Tobe Hooper's instincts, you can tell at every point, and the writer, technically, the instinct is fully in line with what Stephen King wrote. But then you can see them having to pull back. Yeah. And that's a shame, because it's still good atmosphere. It's still good character work. It's still good world building.
I think
I would say the score is shit, but
yeah, I mean, that once again feels like something that they're not going to put the time and effort into it. It's bad, but like across the board, I think all the actors are really good.
All the actors are good, and this is a murderer's row of 70s TV actors.
It really is, including
that's
people.
That's not a slam. They're great.
Well, no, because I was going to say, including people we've seen in other TV productions.
Yes.
Welcome back, Mr. Mason.
Welcome back, Mr. Mason, Mr. Lewis, and Mr. Cook.
Yeah, I was going to say Elijah Cook Jr. Did we see Lou Ayres in something too?
It feels like we did. I just wasn't sure.
I couldn't tell either, but it's one of those things where I'm like, if
he was one of those, classic actors that in the 70s became TV. It was all TV from that point on.
Yeah.
But he feels like he showed up in something classic at some point that we saw, but I don't know.
I don't think so. I'm looking at his
no,
IMDb
but he was
here.
in Donovan's Brain, which is a great 50s sci-fi horror.
He's also
classic.
just in other stuff I watch. I'm looking at this going like,
you've seen him.
I see Columbo. I see a Planet of the Apes movie. Like I see like Battlestar Galactica
and Kung Fu.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Two episodes of The Bionic Woman.
Yeah. Multiple Hawaii Five-Os.
Battlestar Galactica. Yeah. This guy is all over my childhood.
These are just the things I'm watching in general. Anyway.
Yeah.
As we've talked about, I have a great love of this era of television, particularly the detective series of this era.
Indeed.
But Salem's Lot, this is a cut above. No question about it. Did you watch this in 1979?
I did. And actually, I think this is one of those examples of, because I would have been 10 when this came on. So I think this is one of those examples of my parents knew I like vampires and horror stuff. obviously the character of Mark played by Lance Kerwin essentially was like, oh my god, that's me.
I don't know any nerd who could watch this and not feel that. And honestly, I think that character might be Stephen King is also part of the...
Well, Stephen King is both Ben and Mark.
Well, there's even specific dialogue to link them together as...
Yes, always a Stephen King novel has a writer at the center. Come on. It's like, I'm working on my new book.
It is one of those things. I read his most recent book, which is about an assassin who, get this, wants to be a novelist.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like,
hey, write what you know.
I know, it's like, this guy's a hardened criminal, but also secretly dreams of writing books. You're like, oh man, that was your way in, King. All right.
I think my parents were slow to reading Stephen King, so I don't think that they had any reason to like not want to show me this. But for a TV movie, especially in part 2, because part 1 is a lot of gearing up.
Which is a common thing in King's books. He likes to really build a world, an atmosphere, and then start slowly
you have to know all these people as real people before all the horror and fantasy starts kicking them in the ass.
It's one of the things that has always made him better than the other horror writers is he writes good characters. Like he writes... That's
though thing. He has stock characters because you watch any or read any of his stuff and then watch adaptations. Is like, all right, here's the brutish, hard drinking guy who has a long suffering wife. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, no, there's that one.
He would have to write the kind of material he's writing, right? He would have.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's there's no question that that's the case. But in 1979, holy shit, he is the new hotness at this point, is he not?
He is on fire because, of course, Salem's Lot was his second novel. Carrie was his first.
I mean,
so he had a feature film that was a huge hit based on his first book.
Yeah.
He gets this based on his second book, and he's already cranking them out past this anyway. I mean, Cujo's already out, I think.
Yeah. We haven't done a King thing on here, so let's take a second here to talk about the man. Because if you're any level of horror fan, or honestly, he's so popular, you don't even have to be a horror fan to have read a bunch of his stuff.
It's true.
By the way,
big crossover
by the
guy.
time this thing airs, he's already written Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Shining, The Stand, The Long Walk, and The Dead Zone.
Jesus Lord.
Yeah, and then Firestarter was the next year.
Okay, yeah. Wait, exactly.
Cujo was 81.
Okay.
Yeah.
He has a lot more cocaine to do before he gets there.
Yeah, man. That's where you get into some of the...
I think probably post this miniseries is when I, as like an 11-year-old, started reading Stephen King. Because it was for TV. And again, my parents weren't taking me to like horror movies in the theater. I'd have to watch old horror movies like Hammer stuff or whatever that showed up on TV.
Right.
So at that age, Salem's Lot was a kick in the pants because, I mean, The Night Stalker I had watched, but the awesomeness of that TV movie got diluted by a lot of the sort of campy cheese of the TV series. So there's that. But when you go to this, I was like, oh, it gets disturbing, very disturbing in part 2. And I think my parents were like, oh, we should not have done this. We should not have let him watch this. But I did love it. And then I started reading the books too. So I've been a fan for a long time. And it's great that we probably won't on this podcast talk about him too much because Stephen King, for being one of the great horror writers of all time, only dabbled with the classic monsters. True. I mean, it's like Salem's Lot is his vampire thing. That's it.
Yeah.
And then you had Cycle of the Werewolf.
Yeah.
And
we will talk about that. We will talk about Silver Bullet next season.
Yep. And he never did a Frankenstein's creature. He never did a Phantom, obviously. I mean, he wasn't sitting there going, oh, I got to do my version of this next.
That is interesting that's not his thing.
No, he was an original and coming up with original and disturbing creatures and aliens and what have you.
Yeah, exactly. It's he's playing on things like just ghosts in The Shining and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, where you're getting like
and the apocalypse, but
right, yeah. I mean,
in the Stand.
If we were doing the devil, we'd have a lot of good stuff.
He did have, of course, in It, Pennywise takes the form of their nightmares, so there is a At one point, one of the kids is attacked by the werewolf from I Was a Teenage Werewolf, the Michael Landon werewolf.
Yes. Yeah, the for those who are only familiar with the movie It, there's a lot crazier stuff in the book like that for obvious rights reasons they wouldn't do in the and also I think it just that would lend a certain insanity, I think, in a visual form that wouldn't read as well.
Yeah, it's possible. But it's funny, we did not cover I Was a Teenage Werewolf. Why didn't we do that when we were doing
because we didn't do the 50s. That's the thing. We've only covered decades starting new. We were just doing studios for a while there.
Because Universal got up to the very beginning of the 50s.
Yeah.
And then Hammer started in the mid 50s.
Right. We did Universal, Hammer, then the 70s. So technically we could still go back and do some decades in the past. I don't think we will.
These aren't great films by any means, but I certainly did watch that one.
I don't need to go back for I Was a Teenage Werewolf anytime soon, but yeah. See, it's interesting. Once again, in our difference in ages, for me, Stephen King was always a presence.
Right.
My dad was and is still a massive fan. So there were always Stephen King books that even as a kid, before I could read, I knew the covers of the Stephen King books, and there was something enticing and interesting about those covers. And I think I don't know if I've talked about this on the show before, but my mom, being an English professor, she actually wrote in a book about teaching Stephen King, an educational book called Reading Stephen King, and she was one of the contributors to this. And my parents actually got to fly to Bangor, Maine, and meet and have dinner with Mr. King.
Oh my God!
And they do have a signed copy of It that I do remember wanting to read, and they were like, "No, not because of the book, not because of the content, but because
you don't want to touch that thing.
Don't touch that." Because
that is too valuable. That is your future.
He is not somebody who's want to sign many books, so that was
true.
Big deal that he signed a copy of one of his books for all the people who participated in that. So pretty cool. I do remember my dad. I said, like, "What'd you say, Stephen King?" He's like, "Oh, nothing. I just shook his hand." Like,
yeah.
He's like, "I thought about it. I thought about saying something, but I didn't know what I would say." So it's one of those things. Like,
well, I think it's they hear any celebrity hears the same things all day long.
Yeah.
There's not really an original take on I really love your work and have for years that you can say that's going to, I mean, it doesn't mean it doesn't matter anything to them, but at the same time, they've heard the same sentiment from every single person they run into. Unless it's someone that comes up and goes, "I don't know why you're so big.
Yeah.
Hate your shit. I hate your shit. You can't write an ending to save your life, Mr. King."
To be fair, that is a way to be remembered by people.
Yes. If that was it's like, this is my end, is I will neg the celebrity.
The other thing about Salem's Lot specifically that I wanted to sort of reacquaint myself with the book before we went into this, and also because we also just had the prequel series to this, Chapelwaite, on TV, which I watched and really enjoyed.
It was good.
But I was like, I want to kind of go back but I didn't have the time to actually read the book. So what I did is I listened to the BBC radio drama version of this. Have you heard this, Brendan?
No.
It's all on YouTube. People can check it out. It is really good. It is a 7-part radio drama adaptation of Salem's Lot done by the BBC. They did a few King novels. They also did Misery and Pet Cemetery and Secret Window and maybe another one.
If it's the BBC, is it British actors doing Maine accents?
Yeah, I mean, they're doing American accents. People aren't really doing Maine accents specifically, but it's pretty good. I will say it was very well done, except for Straker is British, of course.
Sure.
But I thought it was great. I thought they did a great job with it. And I highly recommend people check that out.
Man, I'd check that out.
If you want sort of a quick, engaging run through of the book.
I reread the novel last year. I think it was either because I knew Chapelwaite was coming up, or maybe it's just because I saw it on my shelf and was like, "Oh, I think it was when I started working on my Dracula project." I was just like, "Oh, I want to dive into vampire stuff."
You know that this sort of stemmed from King's interest in Dracula, and actually him when he was a teacher and teaching Dracula. He said that it was sort of like him going like, "Oh, this is an what if Dracula came to my main town? What would that look like?"
And essentially, that is what this is. Yeah. This is, in a way, Dracula fan fiction, and but King is just such a good writer. It does not, unless you're really diving in, you don't see those parallels unless you're just a big fan.
Yeah.
And even then, it detracts from it, not in the least, because you read that novel, I'm not sitting there going, "Oh yes, this is the stand-in for this," and "Oh yes, this is the way." It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's just so good. And to think of that guy being in his 20s writing that, it makes me want to kick him in the teeth.
It's certainly, I mean, I think most King fans would rank this up pretty high on the list of his books.
Yeah, and I think most King fans would rank this pretty high on a list of his adaptations, because he's pretty notoriously had bad luck with people adapting his stuff. It often is very disappointing.
It's an
this one, for all of its restrictions, is good.
It is really good, and this is one I often see people put up as one of the best. I do think when people talk about how many bad King adaptations there are, I do think it's just a law of numbers of there are so many King adaptations, because I can think of certainly many very good King adaptations. The thing is, this guy is got to be one of the most adapted writers. Anytime he writes anything, somebody's immediately trying to adapt it. I mean,
even short stories. I mean, they made a full-length feature out of The Mangler.
Yeah. Oh, and what a feature it was.
Oh, God.
It was a franchise, too. There were multiple Mangler movies.
God.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting what things have spawned. Children of the Corn, they're up to like 8 of those now.
Yeah.
It is fascinating which ones have taken on. And now it feels like we're in a whole new era of it that really kicked off with the It movies. And now everybody's, because the people who made It are now adapting Salem's Lot. It's the same writer as It Parts 1 and 2, who is now directing as well the adaptation. He was also the showrunner of the much beloved and very instantly canceled Swamp Thing TV series.
Wait, didn't you say it'd come back? No, it didn't come back. It just finally aired on
CW.
CW.
Yeah, they basically they needed programming since they weren't filming anything with the coronavirus, and so they just were like, let's put these Swamp Thing episodes out on network and see what happens. So I don't know. I wish it would come back. It was so good. But anyway, so even still, we're still going back to, how about some more Stephen King to adapt stuff?
Exactly.
And now we're going back. We just had the Pet Sematary movie out. There's a new version of Christine in the works.
That's not a bad adaptation. I mean, not great, but it's not bad.
It's a really good movie, but you certainly... There's a lot of the book that isn't in the movie that if you wanted to take another shot at it, you could. And it's Brian Fuller doing that, who I love. So we'll see. But anyway,
John, if there's one thing, as we're speaking about Stephen King, before we dive into the movie proper, can I just state that I don't want to be buried in a pet cemetery.
Damn.
I don't want to live my life again.
Okay. All right.
I'm just going to keep quoting from the theme song that was written by the Ramones.
Sometimes dead is better, Brendan.
And also Pepperidge Farm remembers. All those Maine accents, it's great.
Farm,
in this one, there's only like 2 or 3 actors trying it.
Oh well, fucking David Soul's never gonna do an accent.
No, of course not. But I was like, wow, good for you, Jeffrey Lewis. Just like he tried valiantly to do that Louisiana accent in Mark of the Wolf. I was like, wow.
Oh, he is a presence I'm always happy to see in a movie. I just love that guy's whole vibe. He's this is a level of TV actor where in this movie where I'm heartened to see everybody. These are like, as you're talking about, these are the cream of the crop TV actors. It feels like in the 70s. People. These are like a lot of my favorite character actors and faces of television, as opposed to the people who are just piss poor TV actors.
One of the ones I was really happy to see, and actually hadn't seen in a long time, and it's always great when I'm reminded of the great work that they've done, was Ed Flanders' hairpiece. His toupee steals this
He's
movie.
in the Television Hall of Fame, right? That hairpiece?
That hairpiece. Which, of course, he totally abandoned by the time he did his, the thing I remember him most from was St. Elsewhere and how great he was and that.
Yeah.
And he had abandoned it by then.
Yeah.
But this is like the year before he did St. Elsewhere, and this thing is That is a low pile rug. That is ridiculous. And as good an actor as he is, because he is, everyone in this thing is on board. No one is hamming unless they need to, like Elisha Cook Jr. What is he going to do except ham? They are all invested. So he does a great performance, but I'm so distracted by looking at that thing on his head.
This is not on a Shatner level of hairpiece.
No, God, this is an Ed's Carpet Warehouse. Everything must go.
I still think the finest hairpiece television ever saw is that Shatner hairpiece.
It really was a good one.
It's a solid one, man.
He could get rough and tumble with aliens and punch them, and it stayed on.
Absolutely. All right, so Salem's Lot. We're talking about part one of this. Now, you and I, you actually did proper research, which I should have done. I tried to guess where the split between these two parts were, and was wrong by a few minutes.
The film, of course, it aired as a 2-part miniseries, and the DVD that we both have, which is the most recent release.
Yeah, the new HD restoration, which is great, and I think well worth people getting.
Oh yeah, it looks really good. They just fused it into one 3-hour plus movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so I looked up where the split happened, because even though I remember this very clearly from my childhood, I couldn't remember where they cut. So John apparently cut a little early. So when we're talking about it, we're going to stop where John stopped, even though it's not technically where the 2 parts split.
Well, and the other thing I do want to talk about is the fact that this was also released theatrically after this and recut into a 112-minute version of the entire story.
There was a European cut.
Which for the longest time actually was the only cut you could get on home video.
Interesting.
Back in the day, I believe on the VHS, because I think when the DVD came out in the early to mid 2000s there, that was a big deal that you could finally get the miniseries version.
Huh. You're blowing my mind.
Yeah. I've never seen that version. I've only seen the miniseries version. I can't imagine it's better with like almost half of the story gone.
Yeah, no, I can't either.
Yeah.
Because one thing that's also very apparent in this, that is a restriction not just because of TV censorship, but also because you're trying to shove the story into it. Tobe Hooper does a fine job, but this really does hop from thing to thing. It's like, okay, we don't have too much time to breathe. So there is some, like right at the beginning, we see Ben Mears going to the house and just staring at it like 3 different times, and each time nothing really advances the story, but they just keep hopping between him talking to people in town, going back to look at the house, and then Straker looking at him going, do we have a problem here? And you're just like, okay. They really just sort of like, hi, I just met you in the park. Can I flirt with you? Sure. Should we go on a date tonight? Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. No, and that really loses, and I have to imagine, a lot of the early setup stuff is just gone because we got to get to the horror in a feature version of this.
Word.
So, and apparently, I did not know this. They shot a couple scenes to reshot a couple scenes to make them gorier for the theatrical version.
Oh, I heard about one thing they did. Yeah.
Which I'm like, I don't know that's as much as I love the gore on this show.
You do.
That alone would not improve this.
No, it's true. That's maybe not necessarily what it's missing, because it really gets creepy very, very well. I don't think it needs to become a blood fest.
I have a feeling it will in a new R-rated Warner Brothers movie, and I'm okay with that. But let's say, so this thing opens in Guatemala.
Mm-hmm.
We're at a church. Much like the book, we start with this.
We have a framing device.
Exactly. So we start on our 2 main characters, Ben and Mark, who are in this church to fill up on holy water. And Ben sees that the holy water is glowing, and he says, "They found us again."
Yeah. So we don't know these people yet, unless you've read the book or seen the movie before.
Well,
but
hang on, I know one of these guys. That's Inspector Ken Hutchinson.
And that's James at 15 with him. Lance Kerwin, a very recognized
James
1970s
at 15, and
TV
it's
face.
even more successful second season. James at 16.
Yep, where he lost his virginity. That was very big for TV at the
at
time.
16 too. Wow.
I know, damn, and it was graphic.
Oh yeah, I can only
showed penetration.
I can TV. Only imagine it was a different time. No,
but
of course, yes,
yeah,
it's David Soul.
It's good. They look sunburned and exhausted. They've been on the run. I love that shit.
It's great, and I love immediately we're getting into some supernatural stuff, and like it's a good. The way this is used here is well done. Where you're like, what's going on? It's a good in media res opening where you're like, all right, let's go. Then we've got credit.
Explain this.
Then we've got very long set of credits though over a. It's something that drives me insane in any older thing, which is the need for opening credits are something I feel we've mostly done away with. Most movies don't have opening credits these days.
There's also maybe a difference between we've seen plenty of feature films that do it too, but the TV thing, it's almost like an episode of Love Boat where you're going to get everybody's name, right up at the front before
also,
the story.
I love the concept of guest stars in something that's only 2 parts.
Yeah,
as opposed to the regulars. But
Barbara Babcock with Kenneth McMillan,
special guest star. But it just like this whole thing where it's like they're beaten down, they're in this church, we gotta get this holy water, it's glowing, they found us again, then 2 minutes of credits.
2 minutes of credits,
and you're just like,
pretty graphically well done. But yeah, you're like, all right,
they're better than most, but you're like, it's just a house turning from night to day. It is the central Marston house at the center of this story, but it is kind of going like, dude, I was ready to get going here. Like,
yeah, sorry, buddy.
No, well, instead now it's 2 years earlier, and Ben Mears is arriving for the first time in Salem's Lot. For the first time again, Maine. As we'll find out.
I will give this film credit. But it sadly also shows a weakness of the film. Some of these exteriors are spot on small Maine town, which I only know because I got to visit my brother out there when he lived out there a few times. And so that looks great. They actually did some location shooting on a coastal town. If it wasn't actually Maine, it looked pretty darn close. It was probably Malibu. But
I have this information, Brendan. This film was shot almost entirely in lovely Ferndale, California.
Well, I was about to say the problem is that the shots that are exteriors that look convincing, they must have done them in maybe 2 afternoons because everything else is so clearly California and backlot. The lake that they sit at on their date is literally the backlot of Warner Brothers Studios, where I used to drive the tour guide through
the movie was shot in all the exteriors in Ferndale, and then the rest shot on Stage 12 at Warner Brothers Burbank Studios.
Yep. Stage 12. Yeah. So unfortunately, those shots are so evident that you're like, poor Toby, you had to put up with this because the exteriors look pretty good. The trees are the wrong kinds of trees, which is why I was like, if they didn't shoot in Maine, they at least found a coastal town, because when they're up on the hill, you can see the beach and the water, and it's like, that's pretty good. And the shape of the small town is very much those kinds of buildings. That's old Maine.
IMDb has the exact street addresses. We could go to the Marston house.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, I see a road trip coming up.
Yeah, and here's
Watch out, Ferndale. Here we come.
The Ferndale Cemetery that fills in for the cemetery here. I've got the address for that, and
nice.
I've got the address for Crockett Realty, and here's the high school.
Perfect.
Seems like they just took over this town of Ferndale.
It'd be great if we rolled in and go, oh no, it's a couple of Salem heads. Here they come.
Well, that happens. Was it on with Gorley and Rust when they did the Michael Myers,
the Halloween stuff,
movies.
And the Myers house.
Yeah, and Matt Gorley and his wife went to the places where they were shooting. Apparently, like the guy at the bar went, a couple of Halloween fans, huh? Oh yeah, we get a lot of those.
I'm not quite at that point, but still do indeed enjoy.
I would more. if I happen to be in the area, go see it, then I would go specifically to see where they've shot something like that.
All right, you've redeemed yourself.
That's my level of where I'm like, well, if I'm already near Ferndale, I might as well see the Marston House.
There you go.
But I'm not going to.
It's a good looking set. They picked that well too.
Yeah, because he arrives and right away we see him see the Marston House, and James Mason is coming out the door here. James Mason's back. He manages not to stumble through the door though.
He's also here.
Hey man, this is way better than him and Frankenstein: The True Story.
Like, of course.
And apparently, according to the IMDb trivia, he fought for this part. He really wanted this part. He jumped at the chance.
He does get some great lines. He gets to be the villain that speaks, because our main vampire, who we don't even see in part 1, he's not much of a talker.
Right. Yes, that is.
So
that is the
face of our villainy
decision here in this version. That I go back and forth about how much I think this works as a movie, but it is sort of the thing when it's like, yeah, it's also why I'm okay with somebody else revisiting this material, right? Because you go like, I do kind of want to see.
When you have a James Mason appearing and speaking for you as a villain, that's all you need is James Mason doing the talking for you for Mr. Barlow, who isn't in town yet.
We'll when we get to 2004, we get Rutger Hauer as Barlow.
Wow,
good choice, actually. I think.
Well, I mean, I love Rutger Hauer.
Yeah. We get Rutger Hauer and Donald Sutherland as Straker in that. So,
wow,
not bad. Not bad.
No,
different.
That's good.
So James Mason's here, but they don't talk here. He just sees him, and
he's like, "Do you have a problem with my house, young man?" It's just he has bought the house. Clearly it's run down, and he's driving a sweet ass old, very dark car, a black car. He always wears dark suits, and as he drives away from the house, he just gives Ben Mears this look like, yes, and Ben Mears just stares back, and then he drives off.
He drives to continue setting up the antique shop that they're opening in town. Now, right off the bat, the other thing is I've been somewhat on a Salem's Lot deep dive, I suppose, because I also am a big fan of another podcast called the King Cast, which is a podcast entirely devoted to the works of Stephen King, and they have.
Oh, is that what it's about?
Yeah, believe it or not, it's actually
about Jack Kirby.
It could be. I would listen to that as well. Like, that's the thing. If it was about either one, you'd believe I was listening to that.
But you're a target audience for both.
Yeah, because by the way, I don't know if there's a Kirby cast out there somewhere. If not,
oh god, there has to be. There's a cast for everything.
If not, I'm going to start doing that. But they had Brian Fuller, who I mentioned earlier, is going to be doing the Christine remake, but he came on. They have every episode they have somebody on who's a filmmaker, actor, somebody of note, right? And they talk about an individual book of King's, and he did Salem's Lot, but he was specifically talking about it as from the perspective of a gay man, the queer coding of this town being terrified of these two men coming in to open an antique shop.
It is true.
That there is,
and actually there's a lot of homophobia in this already too.
That's what he brought up to is this whole idea of like, oh, it's this idyllic small town, but it's like, it was kind of already dark and fucked up before the vampire even comes. People were already jackasses. They weren't. It's not the innocent town being infected by evil. It's the already bullshit Americana idea that is then seized upon by actual evil.
But Ben Mears also brings it up, and of course it's from the novel as well. The whole point wasn't that the vampires invade or the vampire invades. The point is the land itself, the house and the land itself is already cursed, dark, evil, and it drew the vampire because it's like, great, that'll be a perfect HQ for me. So like Salem's Lot, and then of course if you watch Chapel Wait, it's like, yeah, this stuff goes way back. it's just a place where darkness comes. It's an evil piece of land. So yeah, I'm sure that it was no idyllic town, but you do have this thing where you have the local constable showing up and going, yeah, so you and Barlow have been partners for a long time. You guys coming to town? It's like, yes, we thought we'd do this in our retirement. Yeah. And then later on, when he's suspected of something, he's like, he goes, well, I understand why you're looking at me. It's like, I'm new to town. Maybe I'm a little strange. And you're like going, we know what this is all getting at. Yes, yeah. yes.
And the book
it's like,
has
well, it's not because you guys are a couple of gay fellas, but okay, it's because you're probably a couple of gay fellas as well.
Well, and that's something Fuller talked about just in general is he's certainly not alone in the LGBT community being drawn to stories of monsters and stuff in youth and outsiders, people who are considered freaks and unwelcome in society. And he's like, I don't know if King meant any of that, but it's in here. I think there is an aspect of that because the book has more distinct homophobia in it. All the time,
but there's also the and they touch on it briefly and then scoot away, but the whole thing that Ben Mears is looked at weird because he's a writer, and then there's a thing where it's like, well, what was his first book about? It was about two men, and then it's just like hanging in midair, and they're like, is he like one of those? And it's like, yeah, well, and they don't even answer that, but it's like, well, he's clearly not. But at the same time, as a writer, perhaps he did write a book that had homosexual themes.
Was it Susan's mother in the movie goes, oh, not one of those?
Yeah, not one of those.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Yeah, there's not much coding. It's pretty much text.
Well, and just the whole like small town going like, oh, anything other than our way of life is strange and upsetting. To whatever that
Meanwhile,
means.
Our lives are full of abuse and alcoholism and lies. It is the hypocrisy infidelity.
Of that. Well, and like the way Mark is treated, I love when his dad's like, "When are you gonna grow out of all this stuff?" Yeah, it's weird, and that certainly hits home. I think with people like you and I, Brendan, where it's like, he's got old movie posters and action figures and stuff. I'm just going like,
what also comes across is again the way he's portrayed, and again, whether this is intentional or not, Mark is portrayed as like he's serious, he's intelligent, he writes also, and he's obsessed with horror stuff. He's an outsider as well. Even his two friends, the Glick kids, they think he's weird too.
Yeah.
So he's another outsider, weird character. And you're like, yeah, man, again, underdogs that become the heroes, that are the ones who save us from greater evils. That stuff resonates really hardcore with me. I love it.
Yeah, and you see it time and time again in genre fiction because of that. So he's putting together the antique shop. Ben, meanwhile, goes to Crockett Realty, and oh boy, someone I'm always excited to see in anything. One of my favorite people that ever lived, basically. Fred Willard is here. Oh, I have a smile on my face as soon as he comes on screen in anything.
The only problem is that, and it's not that he couldn't do it, because he certainly did. And in fact, I'd say his career was almost half comedy and drama. But for such a comedy god, anytime I saw him in drama, not just this, but anything, I was like, what a waste. it's like you're seeing him restrained and he's doing a good job and he has some charm, but you're like going, just let this guy say whatever's on his mind because it's going to be funny.
I did hear a thing about Christopher Guest said he was the only actor in any of those movies who, when the film ran out, he still had more.
It's like, I can keep going. We're good. We got enough. Oh, no, I got plenty more.
We don't have any more film, Fred. Like everybody else was like, good. I was done. So, but Fred was like, no, I have so much more.
Yep. Fred Willard was a classic, was one of the best of all time. And he is here playing Crockett, who is the local realtor.
And actually, I think in this case, his persona really does work. Not that this is a comedic character, but this is a huckster. This is a guy who presents himself a certain way that I think works to have a comedic actor in the part. He
needs to be. I mean, it's actually a very 70s character. This is essentially Herb Tarlick from WKRP.
Oh, 100%.
right down to the tacky coat.
Oh my
it's
god,
a guy
the suit he wears in this is
yes,
I love it so much.
This is low-key Swinger, the would-be cool guy who just isn't. But so it's that trope.
Well, he's the guy who is only swinging in this town. You know
in this town.
He's a big shot in Salem's Lot. He's a loser anywhere else. But here, he's Mr. Real Estate, baby. And he's the guy that these swanky, rich European dudes have chosen to do business with.
And he didn't only sell them the house, as we see. He's not Renfield, but he very clearly becomes like, I will, whatever your needs are, because I guess he gets some sort of commission or pay for anything. It's like, all right, I'll arrange for have men go down to the wharf to pick up the box, and I'll have them drop things off, and you tell me what you need.
That's what I love about him, is he's the guy that you don't even have to hypnotize into being the thrall. You just throw some cash his way, and he's like, hey, whatever you need, man.
He's the weasel. He's like, I got it for you. Absolutely. Glad to help.
I feel like Straker immediately seized upon this dude as like, yeah, he'll be really helpful.
I'm going to need a couple of men to go down to the wharf and pick up. And he's like, absolutely.
He's got his notebook out. He's like, doesn't question a thing. It's like, he's
picking up a headboard.
It's a headboard. You want it taken to the house. You got it. Yep. And I think even at one point, isn't Straker like, now will any of this be a problem? And he's like, no, not at all.
I love it. He's like,
Yeah. So Ben Mears goes to see him here to inquire about the Marston house. He's like, ooh, no, I just sold it, actually. You can't stay there. But he's the one who points him over to Eva Miller's boarding house.
Right.
Which
I also love the fact that when Ben Mears is like, okay, I'll check that out. Or maybe it's before that anyway, but Crockett goes, man, no one's cared about that place in 20 years, and suddenly everyone wants it.
Yeah.
It's like it's like going, it's amazing you wanted the Marston house, but it's already gotten picked up by somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, Matt's been sitting there, no one's cared about it for 20 years, huh?
Yeah. Anyway, I will not look into that any further.
It's like, whatever.
So he goes.
They send him off to the boarding house. We also meet Boom Boom Bonnie in this scene.
We do meet Boom Boom Bonnie, who is, right away. There's a very flirtatious energy between her and Larry Crockett.
Yeah.
Which is,
and she's not called Boom Boom Bonnie to her face, but it's obviously a town nickname.
Yeah.
She is played by Julie Cobb, and she is Crockett's secretary. And clearly they've been having an affair. And after Ben Mears leaves, it's a whole thing of like, well, my husband's going to be out doing a thing until he's going to be in Boston, and he's going to be out until da-da-da.
Yeah.
And like, well, then maybe we'll hook up. Sounds good.
Julie Cobb, very much a presence of TV of this era.
Oh my God.
And before,
you see her face and you're like, yeah, I know her.
Yeah, she's one of those people where you don't even know what you know her from. And then when you look it up on IMDb, you're like, oh, everything. It's just from a lifetime on TV. She was in an episode of the original Star Trek series.
Yes.
And 22 episodes of Charles in Charge. Which was
that would probably mean that was she the mom?
I think she was the first mom, because if you recall,
right, they
switched. Is in one of my favorite things that ever happened on TV. The family of the first season moves out, and in the second season, a new family moves in, and they just also get Charles. He just comes with the house. I get the house stays the same.
Again,
Charles
that realtor's like, it has central heating. We have very big walk-in closets. It comes with Charles, and over here,
you get your very own Scott Baio.
Scott Baio's just hiding and just standing there, like going, hope you like it.
Yeah, Scott Baio's great. He'll be good for the kids. You will have to put up with the occasional Willie Ames appearance, but whatever. They'll get into shenanigans. It'll be fun.
Trust me on this. You'll want to have Charles in charge of you. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, she was the original mom on there, and James Widows, the original father.
Oh, James Widows.
Yeah.
These are giants of TV.
Well, I will say Charles in Charge was a childhood favorite of mine. I was a big Charles in Charge fan.
I'll allow it.
Yeah. It's another one I've revisited as an adult and went, ooh, not as fun as I remembered it when I was like 5.
Oh, my sense of humor and of what comedy is has changed and matured over the years.
We're talking very little kid me was into Charles in Charge. I just thought, no, Willie Ames. What'll he say next?
John 3:16.
Yeah, little did we know what was going to end up being the case with that guy.
Oh boy.
Crockett goes over to the antique shop, and we're getting a real evasive from Jen. Mr. Barlow's not here yet, but any day now we should be expecting him.
One thing that is clearer in the books and in the movies, you just keep going, and the movie you just go, what is this obsession? Everyone in town is like going, is Barlow here yet? Yeah. Is he here? Has Barlow shown up yet? Well, and it's like, yeah, whatever. We'll meet him when he gets here. Everyone's like going, is he here? Is he here?
I think it's here where Mason goes like, oh, you'll meet him soon enough and you'll be delighted, I'm sure. Like this whole thing about like, you're going to love him when, trust me, he's worth the wait, like.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, it is clear that, because Mason talked about how much he loved the script, it is clear in his performance. Once again, just looking at the two, between this and Frankenstein, the true story, this is such a livelier James Mason here. Like, he's really, you can feel how much he likes playing this part.
Certainly, I can't dig into the guy's personal life and wouldn't. But it seems like in True Story, which was just, 3 years before this?
Yeah.
4? He was rounder.
Yep.
He looked florid, as in he looked like someone who's been hitting it all day. Here, because he's older, perhaps he's kicked the sauce for a while. He's a slimmer, older, clearly, but he's also much more focused.
Let me tell you, Toby, here's how much I like your project. I won't be drinking during the filming of it. I care too much about this one.
Toby, just be rest assured that as soon as you yell cut on the last day, I will have a truck backing up to my house full of the most delicious rum and scotch and various other liqueurs.
I've already put in the order, old man. It's they know me. They said, oh, the usual, James. I said, yes.
My entire budget went to turning my basement into a giant freezer for my various alcohols. I have tubs prepared in which I will steep my body.
I'm past the point of consuming it through my mouth. I merely absorb it into my skin.
I have become something of a sponge. I was swelled to great widths.
Been a hot day. Better take a whiskey bath.
There will be no open flames or cigarettes allowed in my house for fear of immediate explosion. Oh, we have fun with the alcoholics, don't we, John?
We do. I know. I miss when we do episodes where people aren't raging alcoholics. It's like, what are we going to talk about?
What do we talk about? I got nothing. This werewolf was stone sober.
Yeah,
we got nothing to talk about. But Mason, as we said, this is a great performance. He's having fun with it.
It's very nice to see him in this because it was a little depressing to watch him in Frankenstein, the True Story.
I don't remember all of part 2, but I'm fairly certain at no point is Straker struck by lightning and turned into a charred skeleton.
I don't know, man. And you know what? I never count that out these days. Once you see
true.
that in one movie,
it's true. I'm probably going to be regretting I ever said that.
Once you know that can happen, you're ready for it anytime, basically, from there on out.
Yeah, well, the director's cut of Alita. I love you, Lolita.
My God, he's a black skeleton.
He's been turned into a bird.
Stanley Kubrick just felt that didn't work.
Oh my God.
Test audiences said no. Test. I just love the idea of test audiences having to watch a Lolita. I can't imagine those cards would come back well.
Could we maybe have a line of dialogue where it stated she's clearly 21?
Yeah.
No, that misses the whole point.
Yeah. Oh, now I really love the idea of Kubrick yelling at Test. No, wrong.
You don't get it.
Yeah.
You're garbage people.
You know what? I don't have a context for what that man's voice sounds like, Kubrick. He was British, wasn't he? Or was he American?
I think he was American, but didn't he live in Britain for so long that he had a British accent?
Yeah, he was an expat, but I can't think of many times I ever heard him talk. Because I was thinking about, I was like, neither one of us are doing a Kubrick, and I don't really know what he sounds like.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah. I'm all right.
Oh, well.
Yeah. I'm all right with that. Guy was a genius. Whatever.
He was. We'll stop.
Yeah. So Ben sets up at the boarding house, and immediately we do have Eva Miller being like, "Oh, writer, eh?" And this is Marie Windsor, and you immediately know she's old Hollywood just by looking at her IMDb profile picture, even if you didn't know anything about her.
Glamour shot.
Yeah, it's a total glamour shot. I was going to say, didn't we talk about her already on here? No, I talked about her in an episode of The Incredible Hulk over on the Green Mile is why I'm remembering Marie Windsor specifically.
But you didn't see that she trained for the stage under Maria Ospinskaya.
Oh.
That's right. She was trained by the woman who said, even a heart that is full of... Well, no, wait. Oh, crap. Oh my God, I'm forgetting the classic Wolfman poem. Even a man who is pure of heart and says his prayer by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the moon is full and bright.
There you go.
Yeah, Maria Ospinskaya. But no, Marie Windsor, yeah, you've seen her.
Yep.
She's been in everything.
She was in... Oh, wait, we did talk about her on this show all the way back in Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy.
Oh, poor lady. She had to be in that one.
Yeah. Just 1 year later, though, she's in The Killing, which is an amazing movie.
It's an amazing movie, and she's great.
Speaking of Stanley Kubrick.
But the same year, she was in Swamp Women, which is one of my favorite really low budgets, and it turned into a great MST3K.
That was also Kubrick, right?
That is actually early Corman.
No, of course.
Oh, I see. You were making a joke.
I was saying, yeah, he directed The Killing and Swamp Women. That was my point there. Yeah.
1956 was a very busy year for Kubrick.
Kubrick made two movies. The first being Swamp Women. Yes, that is a great MST3K. I do distinctly.
Holy mackerel! It's great,
and it has my boy Mannix in it.
Yep, Mike Touch Connors.
Hey. She's very interested in what he's writing. Everybody wants to know, well, you've come here to write a book. What's the book about? And he's like, oh, things and such. He's very vague about it.
Interesting is this is a small town. Most of these people have never left this town, but Ben Mears did live here. Now, true, in the book, it turns out he was only here for like a couple of summers.
Right.
But no one seems to know that this famous novelist, who's not really famous, but quasi,
knows.
It's like, no one knows that he had lived here before. They're all like going, well, you want to turn? He goes, I know where it is.
Yeah.
Well, you want to go? No, I know where it is. I lived here.
Yeah.
He apparently made no impact except for on his high school teacher when he lived here as a child.
The book makes it clear he was only here for a little bit. The movie makes it seem like he was a full-on town regular.
Yeah, when he goes to the bar, he orders something, and they go, "Oh, that's a local boy. He knows all the. He knows the classic." Salem's Lot
he
drink.
knows where everything is. Which just because I spent a couple summers somewhere doesn't mean I go oh hell, I know where everything is.
That's kind of true, too, yeah.
Yeah, here he's like, oh, you don't need to tell me twice. Ben Mears, Salem's Lot, born and bred, man. But everybody wants to know what his book's about. Meanwhile, he takes a walk outside and sees Susan Norton with a copy of his book. Now, would Ben Mears have approached her? But I don't know if he would have approached her anyway. But here, it's specifically, he sees she's reading his book. He's like, hello.
It's kind of the way it appears, but we're talking about a young Bonnie Bedelia. Yeah. Would you not approach her regardless of what she was reading?
We're talking a young Bonnie Bedelia and a height of his hunk status David Soul. So
that guy.
This guy. On. I mean, it is something I think about both versions that have been made of this is I never read Ben Mears as a truly beautiful man. And to be played by 79 David Soul and then later Rob Lowe, you're just going these guys are very handsome to be Ben
It's a little
Mears.
Mary Sue-ish, and it's not, as you say, it's not in the book. It's not mentioned that he's any kind of a looker. But it seems like, okay, the character can't be heroic and a writer and all this and be an average looking guy.
Yeah.
No, apparently he has to be, well, I'm not maybe the world's greatest novelist, but look at me. Yeah. Look at my handsomeness. Now I'm going to sing Don't Give Up on Me, Baby.
Don't give up on us, baby.
That's as much as you can sing. We can't pay for any more.
But I feel like that's like the 5th time we've sung it somehow.
Yeah.
Even though this is the first
song.
David Soul
Maybe
thing.
it should just become our theme song.
And then David Soul sues us.
But I will say we'll make fun of him because he was 70s TV guy, and
he's
totally
made the
very poor decision to play Rick Blaine in the short-lived Casablanca TV series, which I watched. Holy hell.
You know what? Because that was always a movie I thought this could really be expanded upon. I really think this could really work as
that is, I'd say, quite a bit of hubris. But anyway,
you watched all 5 episodes they made of it?
Did. Me and my brother did. But I will say that he's good. I mean,
he's really good.
Here.
I think he's actually very good in this. He's a good actor. Like,
I will say, and actually, I think Bonnie Bedelia in her scenes is kind of freaking awesome.
Oh yeah.
There's
I knew
moments of actual talent in this that you're sitting there going, they don't have to do this for a 1970s TV movie, but they're giving good performances. They're giving really solid performances, which makes the tragedy that happens down the line actually resonate a lot more. But anyway,
well, that's
very much a Stephen King.
I was gonna say that's so much of the key to King's horror is, doing terrible things to characters you've grown to like.
Yeah,
it's not. It's not because in a book you can't really go a boogity boo, and get somebody like that. It's more the dread of like, no, don't do that.
Wait, are you saying you never read my novel Boogity Boo?
Jesus! You turn the page and go, oh shit!
That's the Kids in the Hall skit. There's a spider on your back, isn't it, in the book? And it was like, people reaching. Like, hey, there's a spider on your back. Brilliant.
It's so silly and so great at the same time. So he does see Bonnie Bedelia, who is great in this, and I've always been a huge fan because I've seen Die Hard like 100 times. So
yep. And it's almost Christmas, even though that's not when you guys will be hearing this. So that's time for another Christmas watch of Die Hard.
It's time for, and I do watch both Die Hard and Die Hard 2, which is also set on Christmas.
That's true.
Die Harder.
Why does this keep happening on Christmas?
Heck, the same thing happened to the same guy twice.
Very good.
Mm-hmm. I've seen both of those many times. So Bonnie Bedelia also in that one, then written out of the franchise in the 3rd movie.
That was one of the biggest crimes.
I have always thought that was a mistake.
Yep.
That's so key to that franchise.
So she becomes a runner, and then there's the hint of that reconciliation phone call. But still.
Yeah, but then by the time you get to Die Hard 4, they're full on just divorced.
John, I've told you this before.
Mm-hmm.
I have not seen any of those films past 3.
Oh man, I fucking love Die Hard 4. Live Free or Die Hard is actually my 2nd favorite after the first one. But
oh my god,
it's so good.
Okay, all right, we're moving on.
Anyway, and you got to watch the director's cut. That's the only thing I'll say about it too.
Okay.
That's mainly because they took out all the foul language and blood in the theatrical.
Wow.
Cut. Yeah, shot as an R-rated movie, recut it, and digitally altered it to be a PG-13.
Oh God, that's disgusting.
Yeah, I know, right? So anyway, so they start chatting. She's like, "Oh yeah, I read. I'm not only reading this book, I read your other book."
Yeah, I like that. He goes, "Yeah, what was the title of it?" She goes, "I don't recall."
It was a book.
It was a book.
This is where we first mentioned that his wife is dead.
Mm-hmm. That's a King trope.
Dead wives, which is interesting for a guy who is happily married and has been for long time.
Yeah, no, but it's an easy thing to evoke it's past.
I'll tell you, it's him
tragedy.
And Chris Nolan also loves a dead wife. Oh, Chris Nolan loves a dead wife.
He cannot get over a dead wife. He loves a dead wife.
He really does, man. I'm pretty sure he would have. Well, he he kind of does try to give Batman a dead wife as much as he can, actually.
Yeah, dead girlfriend. And that's a tragedy that would send Bruce Wayne into hiding for 8 years.
Oh yeah, that'd be enough to have Batman give
we
up
can't
being
talk about
Batman.
that either. I will just go into a rage.
We are in agreement about the serious problems in that trilogy.
Yep.
But yeah, so he goes, so yeah, but basically the way I will say, this is one of the only things that the translation from book to this is like, his wife being dead is a big part of the book. Here it's more like, wife's dead, so we can do it.
That is essentially how it's set up, because he's asking her about, well, so you kind of married or have kids? And she's like, no, not really. And you? Wife's dead. Great.
He gives the classic, like, well, surely you have a boyfriend as hot as you are, basically, right? And she's like, no, she used to have a boyfriend, and that guy will be kind of important to the plot later. But whatever, they're broken up, and so it's like, yeah, let's go to dinner. And off they go.
They actually make that sound effect as they go to their date.
They don't like in the book though get ice cream sodas, which sounds so good.
And you get on me about being detail obsessed. I noticed a distinct lack of ice cream sodas in this movie.
It's only because I just recently listened to that thing
and
have that in my head. I don't think I would have remembered that detail.
An ice cream soda is just a float. Why don't they just call it a float?
Yeah, but I don't know. The only thing I say I like about that is just like the small town diner ice cream soda aspect of it. We don't really ever go with them on their dates beyond to that lake that's on the back lot.
Yes, God.
Take a lovely trip to the back lot in Burbank.
That lake is the same one that the Duke boys would jump over all the time.
It does.
It's this little man-made pit.
Well, you can kind of tell. Like
and they swap out whatever plants they need because they just have the plants.
It did read familiar. It did read TV stage.
Just a good old boy.
Oh,
that's as much as we can do.
That's as much as we can do. Yeah, well, there it is. We don't want them Duke boys coming after us.
Well, looks like John and Brendan done got themselves in another pickle. Looks like old Boss Hogg's going to have a word with them.
Oh no, not Boss Hogg. So
Roscoe P. Coltrane.
So she agrees to have dinner with
I've
him.
wasted my life, John.
We cut back, and Ben is walking by the Marston house, and now he sees that there's a light on in it. And he's like, and then he almost runs into James Mason. Excuse me there, dear boy. Yes. And he's basically like, I have not. This is where he's like, you seem to have much interest in my house. And he's like, well, yeah, I think this is where he's like, I used to live around here. And he's like, whatever. Straker doesn't have much interest in Ben Mears.
No, he doesn't know that this is going to be his main enemy.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Crockett's closing up the realty office for the night. And this is where we're introduced to, was Elijah Cook Jr. ever made to play a part more than the part of Weasel in this?
But the same thing. But the sad thing is that it's true.
Because he plays the same
character as he is in the book.
Well, but also it's the same character this guy plays in the Night Stalker, basically.
Yeah. So my question is like, is this perfect casting, or did Stephen King just write it going, yeah, eventually Elisha Cook will play Weasel? Because it is just Elisha Cook.
You read the book and you picture Elijah Cook, whether you've seen this or not. Like,
the hopeless drunk in town who's fairly harmless but also acts as a spy.
Every town needs an Otis, let's be honest.
Oh God. And they do keep the little thing from the book where it's like, yeah, everyone loved Marie Windsor, whatever her name is. Yeah, everyone loved her when she was younger, but she ended up marrying this guy Weasel. And they got divorced because he couldn't stop drinking, but he still lives with her because he's still in love with her.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, they kept that from the book. All right.
Yeah, this is kind of tossed in here in a little bit. I mean, it does give him a sad side, I guess, than just being a bumbling drunk. So I guess it's a good thing that they put that in here.
But we have the local constable come up to him, and this is where's his name? We've seen him a million times. Kenneth McMillan.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, Weasel, you stupid drunk.
Well, I mean, Kenneth McMillan. Oh my God. I mean, this is Baron Harkonnen from the David Lynch Dune, a movie I've seen so many times.
And what's so weird is he looks exactly the same in this as he does in that.
So weird.
He also has the boils on his face.
And here I thought that was makeup. This is not his only Stephen King appearance either. He is also in Cat's Eye.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take that.
That one's okay.
It's okay. I mean, and as an anthology, it's like one will work better than the other. This one's okay. This one's bullshit. I like the Smokers Incorporated or where that was.
Mm-hmm.
Look, that's a good short.
But as awful as he is as a human being, I do love James Woods on screen, though.
Oh, I know you do.
I hate that he's such an awful person in real life, but
a good actor.
Always enjoyed seeing James Woods and stuff. And he played a great dirtbag. So
yes.
he was always
many times
grade A dirtbag. And someday on this show we will get to John Carpenter's Vampires.
Yes,
my all-time favorite dirtbag monster hunter.
And we will get to bring up a lot of his political theories. But anyway. So the constable says to Weasel, hey, the new guy in town, that writer, Ben Mears, I want you to keep an eye on him. And he goes, well, why? And then he goes, because he killed 18 people. And Elijah Cook, his eyes go really big. What? He goes, yeah, they all asked why.
They were all sad old men who asked why. He really hits him under the belt here, man.
There you go. And then he's like, oh, you... But essentially he says, you do this for me or I'm going to make your life a living hell. So keep an eye on the writer.
Yeah, the constable, not a likable dude.
No, he's another one of those, that's another trope of King is there's a local authority figure, cop or whatever.
The constable, and I remember this from the book, has one of the most flowery names for one of these guys, Parkins Gillespie.
Oh, that's right.
Which I don't know if they actually say it in part 1 at least. They pretty much just call him Constable. But in the book I remember going like, that's an interesting name for like the town cop in this main town. Parkins Gillespie.
Wasn't that the name that you sign into hotels as?
Well, now I have to change it. Thanks, Brendan. Bothered by all those podcast listeners wherever I go. How come you didn't talk about I was a teenage werewolf? People just shout that at me. So he's asking him to spy on Ben Mears. And it's anyway. So then we follow Bonnie home and see what her life is when she's not cheating, or who she's cheating on, and we meet Cully, her husband. Played by another TV favorite, and actually co-star of a movie I know you just watched, Basic Instinct. Yeah. Well, and also, how about the fact that he's the voice of Perry White on Superman the Animated Series?
I certainly know Mr. Zunda from that, but I just sit there going, and he's a fine actor too. It's just that because I associate him so much with being the voice of Perry White, I don't like hearing the voice of Perry White say such horrible things.
He was also the voice of the ventriloquist in Scarface on Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, great.
I know him best as I am a devotee of Law & Order, and he was Sergeant Max Greevy in the first season of Law & Order.
Chung Chong.
He was one of the original detectives on that show.
Wow. And they've had how many now?
Oh, quite a few. In fact, Law & Order they're just cooking up a new one. I can't wait. They're finally bringing back original recipe Law & Order to TV, and we're going to get some new detectives and lawyers. So it's back. It's back, baby. That's what I need.
I love a show that is just a formula. Not a bad formula, but just a formula that can go this goddamn long.
It's coming back for season 21.
Unbelievable. Yeah. But then again, Gunsmoke, still one of the longest TV shows of all time, and Lord knows that was just a formula every single week for 25 years.
That's the thing, though. I mean, I am such a Law & Order fan because the formula is so comforting to me. It is like one of my comfort food shows. I just love Law & Order. I just love the vibe of it and everything. It just, there's something about it. And all its spinoffs, too. I've loved all the Law & Orders.
Well, you've heard it here first. John Campbell, Law & Order fan.
Oh, big time, yeah.
Chong Chong.
far more than any of the other procedurals. I was never a CSI guy.
No, me either.
Too sciencey. I don't care. I like the detective stuff. You get into the science, I'm like, what? So anyway, let's so she comes home and oh yeah, this guy Cully, he's a real piece of work.
Yeah. Again, a very Stephen King piece of work. But he's a jealous, lowbrow, beer drinking truck driver who's already onto her. He's very suspicious. He's onto her immediately. And she's trying to like, oh, how you doing, honey? Let's stay in tonight. It's going to be great. And you'll go when? How long will you be away? And he's like, yeah, just a little bit, babe. Don't worry. And he's looking at her like, just turn your back and I put it right between your eyes. So he's drinking beer and being gross. Mm-hmm. He's the guy that's got the job from Crockett to go to the wharf to pick up that sideboard.
Yeah.
Which but we're going to find out what he's going to
do. In order to do this. By the way, is it bad that I'm surprised to find out this guy's still alive? George Zunza? He's still with us. I don't know. Maybe it's just he was a big fella back then and still is, and I don't know.
And I see surprising that he's in his 80s now.
Yeah, I don't know. But I'm almost like I swear I remember him dying. That's awful. But sometimes that's.
I obviously didn't do the job well enough. I saw the light go out in his eyes.
I guess he's a better actor than I thought. No, I don't know. It's just one of those things. Sometimes I'm like, I could have sworn that he died, but
I do kind of know what you're talking about. I think there was an assumption that I had as well that he had passed, but I'm glad to hear he's still around.
He has not acted since 2011, but I don't know why. And he was born in Bavaria, Germany.
Wow.
That's just from looking at his IMDb.
But almost immediately sounded like some sort of East Coast tough guy, which he's sounded like for his entire career.
It's like little 3-year-old sons is like, hey, doing, ma?
I ain't gonna eat the peas, ma. I don't like the peas.
Hey, it's no dice on the mashed carrots, all right?
What do you think I am? Some sort of rodent? Some sort of, I don't know, some sort of hamster? That's not for me. That's not me food, ma.
And this guy, you talk about a character who is just instantly, the second you see him, you're like, oh yeah, he's in front of the TV. There's a bunch of empty beer cans around. Yeah. You're like, oh yeah, this guy's a big fat piece of shit. Like,
yeah, he is a big fat piece of shit.
Yeah, and he will continue to be that throughout the rest of this. So it's one of those things where you're like, although, well, we'll talk about like she does some bad stuff later too that I'm not crazy about. Meanwhile, Ben is
None of these people are saints, John.
No. Ben is meanwhile having dinner at the Nortons with Susan's parents, which, because we never saw their first date, it makes it seem like he immediately had dinner with her parents.
Yeah.
It was kind of odd to me when it's like, yeah, we'll get dinner later. And then when we see them at dinner, they're having dinner at her house with her parents. You're like, oh, that's weird. Although I don't think that's meant to be the case, and that's certainly not how it is in the book, but just the way it's cut like this.
Yeah, it is one of those things where, like I was saying, it seems like they're fitting a lot in, but they're still having to do some ridiculous kind of jumps where you're like, okay,
yeah,
this isn't edited perfectly because they're having to get from plot point to plot point.
Right, exactly. But
her father's the local doctor.
Yeah.
So that's important.
Yes, it is. I don't think much happens because all I wrote is Ben at the Nortons for dinner.
No, it is almost like teenagers. He's meeting the parents, but there is a thing where the father, once the women are cleaning dishes, is like, yeah, I know you two are grown adults. Just try to be more discreet than making out at the lake. Is basically the whole thing there. And it's also in the kitchen where the mom says, what does he write? And she says, oh, I read his early novel and the new one. The new one's really good. What was the old one about? 2 men.
Yes, that does happen.
That's where that comes up.
That scene. There are several
The mother doesn't seem to like him. He even says that when they walk out. He goes, your dad's cool. I think he likes me. She goes, yeah. And he goes, your mom, however. She goes, she only likes the guy that I used to date.
Who is Ned, objectively terrible.
I know.
Ned Tebbets is his name.
Ned Tebbets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was like she had settled, or the mom had settled on her marrying that guy because I guess he was like a local football hero or like Mr. All-Star,
Yeah.
that sort of
Well,
thing.
we've all read Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and that really worked out in that. So,
Brick.
I saw a terrible community college production of that play.
You didn't need to say terrible. You just needed to say community college.
Yeah, my college did Cat on a Hot Tin Roof after I had left, but I came back and it was, don't do it.
Yeah, just don't do it.
That's some complex theater for students. Anyway, so her mom doesn't like anybody, is what she tells him. We get several people telling Ben Mears, like, hey, be more discreet with that Norton gal. There's a lot of people who weigh in on, like, hey, watch it. We heard you were making out by the lake.
I mean, but they do constantly have her and other people go, yeah, small towns. And they are making that point constantly. It's like, yeah, this is what it's like.
This here's a nice town, pal, you know?
Yeah, but everyone's up in everyone else's business.
Everyone's up in everyone's business, and it's not a nice town. It's that thing that it's in a lot of King stuff, the sort of, once again, phoniness of small town Americana. It's the thing I love about Twin Peaks. I'm always drawn to this whole thing about, like, everybody's full of shit. Small town people do just as awful of things as big city people. In fact, often worse, because they can get away with it easier in a small town, actually, in some ways.
That's true. All right.
People are more willing to look the other way, minding my own business over here. That's
true.
So let's see.
Does he go to the high school next?
Ben and Norton. Well, Eve finds Weasel poking around Ben's room while he's gone.
Oh, yeah.
And then they both are like, hey, what are these notes he's got here? Something about some kind of house that's evil?
Yeah, the whole thing is that she's like, don't be poking around in his room. He's like, I'm just reading this piece of paper here that was in the typewriter. And then, of course, the gag is she's just as curious and comes over and starts reading it. And it is a chunk of his novel saying the house itself is evil and it's a collector of evil and all this stuff. And she's like, oh, I wonder what he's writing about. And then Weasel goes, the Marston house? I don't know if we, the audience, needed to have any of that underlined, but apparently they felt we did.
The only thing I like about the scene is the beginning of it, where she's like, hey, don't be poking around. What's he got? You know, like that. Yeah, that's kind of fun.
I like that, but also, like, it's a little tiny window into their relationship. Yeah. It's like, they're not together anymore, but she has been looking out for his poor drunken self.
It's yet another thing where it is like, it's from the book, but you're just going, like, when you're taking it into this kind of format. Yeah, you know,
what do you need to keep? What can you get rid of?
I mean, the thing I respect that Hooper's doing with this whole production, he's trying to capture the thing in the book, which is the portrait of this town.
He also has 3 hours. It's not. I mean, it's longer than a feeture film. Exactly. So even though it is on TV, he has a little bit more breathing room.
It is something I heard King describe it once as Dracula meets Our Town. And so I do like that because it's a longer format. Hooper is able to have these little anecdote moments that have that Our Town feel.
Yeah,
I was in the community theater production of Our Town.
I remember you played Mary, right?
Yes, and I brought the house down. No, I had such a tiny role as the old professor in town. Yeah,
they still talk about that performance.
I showed up, I had like a couple-minute monologue, and then I was out of that sucker.
I was in the green room playing on my phone.
Reading my crime books, probably. But anyway, it was just like, well, I'm done, and I had my book backstage, dropped my jacket off, and I was like, all right, I'll see everybody else in 2 hours.
Pizza party? Yeah. Pizza party? Okay, great. See you at the pizza party.
Yeah, I didn't mind that literally nothing rode on my performance.
Isn't that the best?
I could have been cut and it wouldn't have affected anything. Let's see. So they're poking around. Ben does ask about the ex. She kind of doesn't answer about Tebbets. Instead, she's like, tell me more about this book. And he's like, well, it is about the Marston house. And it's like, oh, really? And once again, we're getting a lot of, he's here to write about the Marston house. Once again, this part one is a lot of setup. Although I do think maybe if I did have a criticism, it is setting up the same thing again and again.
Yeah, it's the repetitive thing where it's like, we do get it. Thank you.
And it, specifically when it relates to Ben and he's here to write this book, because that is sort of the... Other people have interesting things. The stuff with Bonnie having the affair, that's all good. Crockett dealing with Straker, that's all good. Even establishing the early stuff with the Glick kids and Mark, great.
Yeah.
It's just that Ben Mears kind of doesn't do a lot early, but we constantly have to keep going to him because he is the hero. But we kind of get the same info about him a lot.
They take quite a while for him to finally speak to the one person that he's going to flesh it out for. Because if you just keep saying, I'm in town to write a book about the Marston house, and then we see that he's writing about it being evil, it's all just hanging in midair, and we hear it again and again. It's not till he finally talks to his old high school teacher that we get the story of why. Where is this coming from? And then, but that's towards the end of this part. It's getting towards the end of part one.
Yeah. Well, because then we get Straker ask Crockett to have movers collect the items, and take it to the house, which we talked about a little bit. Then is when Ben goes to talk to Burke at the high school.
Yeah.
Jason Burke, our buddy Lou Ayres.
Our buddy Lou Ayres, who they're not doing it in this, not in the TV movie, but in the novel, he is also coded as gay. In fact, it's not even coded. I mean, in the novel, he's clearly gay, but he's one of those, like, I'm in a small town, everyone knows it, I'm talked about behind my back, but I've been here so long, and I teach well, and, I care about the kids. But he's Ben Mears' old English teacher from the high school who inspired him to start writing, so they're friends. And in the novel, it's cool because, again, it's one of those progressive, I don't care that you're gay, man. You're one of my favorite people. You were a great teacher. So
I don't think in the novel,
he serves a purpose.
I don't think in the novel he's this elderly.
No, but Lou Ayres was a good actor and just very old.
Yeah, Lou Ayres is great in this part. No question about it.
But yeah, Ben shows up at the high school where they're doing the local pageant. Apparently there's a local history pageant. And what's weird is this idea, because he scoots over to the table where the English teacher, who I guess is directing it, is sitting. Yeah. And he says, they're doing the same old pageant, huh? And he goes, yeah. But then he goes, later we find out that Mark wrote this one, just like you wrote it when you did it.
Yeah.
I'm like, why do they have to rewrite a pageant? If it's just local history, what do you bring into it? Each year a new writer takes a turn at it.
The local history pageant and Fred Willard, I can't not think Red, White, and Blaine.
I know. Red, White, and Blaine. Oh, my God.
One of the greatest things ever committed to film. That movie.
Do you smell that? What is it? Salt water.
Oh, it's the best. Was it they make stools? That's what they're famous for?
Yeah. They're known for their stools because President Wilson or whatever on a whistle stop tour was given a stool that the town had made for his gout. Yeah. And then he's like, I believe this to be the finest stool I've ever had.
And that's what put Blaine on the map.
Capital.
Yeah.
Everything
working
is stools.
And building. Never stopping.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
This is an excuse for you guys and our listeners, I hope, don't listen to this straight through because we babble. Go ahead and take a break on this podcast. Go watch Waiting for Guffman.
Yeah.
And come back. You'll feel refreshed. You'll be full of love and happiness because it's one of the funniest movies ever.
By the way, isn't that our subtitle? Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters. We babble.
We babble. Prone to babbling.
Actually, that might be the entire medium of podcast, though. That's podcasts
true.
Are nothing but babble. It's like, do you want radio but with none of the structure? Meet podcasts.
We could have written this down, but hey, We're not. You must remember this.
Yeah, the ones that do sometimes freak me out, or like weird. Or I'm going like, oh, they're reading this, aren't they? This was like a prepared statement. I don't know how to do podcasts like this.
Well, the one I was going to do on comics history, I was going to do it that way, and it's just so much work.
It is. It's way easier to just babble.
Script. Oh my god,
babbling's pretty easy for folks like us.
Yep.
So, the kid. Then this is where he goes. Yeah, that Mark kid. He reminds me a lot of a young you.
Yeah. Yes. Lance Kerwin is Mark, and so he's, we've talked about him before, he's the earnest, young, intelligent kid who has a horror movie obsession.
Mm-hmm. And then it's the next day, and Ben comes to pick up Susan at school, but this is where we see Ned Tibbetts, and Ned
Tibbetts is watching
from his van. Now, who is this? Barney McFadden is Ned. Now, this guy I don't know.
The name weirdly is familiar, but I'd have to look up his IMDb. Barney McFadden. A lot of
TV credits. Doesn't look like he was a regular on anything though. Just a lot of. Great! He did a classic episode of Del Vecchio.
Yeah, no, he looks like he just has kept it fairly steady work, but nothing big.
Couple episodes of Rockford, a Barnaby Jones, an episode of the How the West Was Won TV series, if anyone remembers.
Well, the good thing is we don't have to deal with him very much in this.
You don't, and he's neither. I mean, he's fine. He's just like Susan. He busts out one of the saddest things I feel like an ex could say to somebody, especially years after a breakup, as implied here. He goes, "You said you loved me." Wow, dude, let it go, man. Like the idea that like
he essentially took a page out of my book.
4 years ago, you said you loved me.
You said you loved me forever, never, never, and never.
What happened?
Did that love go away?
That's not possible. Yeah.
Physics states, the laws of physics state that love once admitted to stays around forever.
Love can be neither created nor destroyed, okay?
This guy
is so close
autobiography,
so close to Kirk Van Houten territory.
Yeah, but he does have the look of I was once the hot shit.
Yeah,
like he's a handsome kind of dude, so it's not like he's a loser.
It's one of those things where it's like this
but
guy
he seems to just do what local.
He could probably.
What is his job?
Oh, it says on the van, and I can't remember because he's got like.
No, that's not his van. Oh, right. That's a different thing.
It says
because they end up in the truck of the other guy.
No, it says Tibbetts something on the van. I think. I think there might be a picture here. Oh, there it is.
Oh, it does.
Oh, yeah. Ned Tibbetts, plumbing and contractor.
There you go. That's steady work. That's good work.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. He's still a pretty good-looking guy. He's got a steady gig. He could probably land another girl. Although
but not a young Bonnie Bedelia.
That's true. Sorry. We don't see anyone in this town who looks even remotely as good as a young Bonnie Bedelia. So
oh my god,
she's very stunning in this. Like
she really is.
And not that Bonnie Bedelia wasn't always an attractive. I mean, she certainly is very beautiful in Die Hard as well.
Well, in Die Hard, that was sort of a return. But I mean, she was always on the periphery. She did little things.
Yeah.
Die Hard was one of the first big things in a long time for her. And at that point, she's in her mid to late 30s. Mm-hmm. And I remember press at the time going, "Oh, she's proof that you can become an actress of age in Hollywood and still be a sex symbol." And you're like, she was always beautiful. Yeah. She's still beautiful. Yeah. If you look at her today, she's hanging in there. She's a gorgeous old lady.
Yeah. I mean, people know her most recently. She was a regular on the Parenthood TV show, which was very good, and she was good on it.
There you go. Well, Bonnie Bedelia, we are your fans.
She was married to. She's
good in this. She's
Craig T. Nelson.
Darn fun.
Talk about a good-looking older couple. Her and Craig T. Nelson on Parenthood. That's not bad.
That is not bad.
Craig T. Nelson was it Count Yorga? What was he in?
He was.
We saw his first screen appearance. One? It was one of the Count Yorgas, right?
Yeah.
And it was the first ever on-screen appearance of Craig T. Nelson. And it was weird because he was an absolute nothing character, but he was the most famous person in the movie. So we're going wow, Craig T. Nelson's doing nothing in this.
No one knew. No one knew.
No one knew Mr. Incredible was in that movie. He's so fucking
The
good.
Incredibles, best thing ever.
So good, and he's such a perfect voice for that. He is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god. Hey, that Pixar. I think they might know a thing or two about putting a movie together.
I think
not.
they got something.
Yeah, I think they got a good run in front of them. Yeah, Susan's like, hey, yeah, leave me alone. We broke up a long time ago. And he's like, what? That's basically the subtext of everything he says.
They actually show him kick a couple of rocks.
Oh, gee.
And walk off muttering.
Oh, jeez. I can't compete with Hutchinson over there.
Starsky, maybe.
Yeah. I think I could put up with a Starsky, but Hutch... I'm definitely better than Huggy Bear, though. Give me that at least. You gotta give me that, Susan. You told me you love me, and I'm better than Huggy Bear.
No, I'm sorry. Antonio Fargas? No, sir.
Doesn't have the charm, man.
No.
Come on.
I know Anton Fargas. I've worked with Anton Fargas, and you, sir, are no Anton Fargas.
Oh, man.
It's not true. If only I had worked with Anton
No,
Fargas.
I was going to say, I need to know these stories if that was true.
No, what a shame.
Yeah. So anyway, Cully seemingly is on his way to pick up Barlow's stuff, but instead he stops and gets two other guys to, how about you fellas do the moving while I spy on my wife?
Yeah, he's going to pay them what he was going to get paid, so he's giving them the job of picking it up.
Yeah.
And this is all happening outside the local cemetery.
Yeah. Very creepy.
Except it's actually
I found it to be not that creepy a cemetery.
Well, the problem is this is one of those parts where you're going, Jesus Christ, soundstage. This is such a soundstage. The plot that we're looking at here.
Yeah.
That it looks cheap.
Yeah.
Toby's doing his best. There's fog, and there's all kinds.
He's doing his best. There's no question. None of this falls on Toby. He this is one of the best directed TV movies I've ever seen. Like, because he's kind of a ringer for this.
Yep.
We debated and said no to doing Life Force, right? His space vampire movie. It's not enough of a vampire movie, I don't think.
It's not enough of a vampire movie. Like I said before, though, I would never say no to watching a movie with that lady walking around naked for literally 2 hours.
To the point, I will say though, she's so naked in that movie to the point when it stops being erotic and becomes now it's just awkward. She's naked too much, and
she's naked all the time, which makes it more like when you're doing figure drawing class in art school.
Yeah.
It goes beyond. There's nothing where it's like, wow, that's attractive or sexy. It's just like, yeah, that person has no clothes on.
It's also making me go like, oh my god, she had to be naked on set this whole time.
She was probably cold.
Now I'm feeling. The only thing I do remember I love about it is that it has a very strange Patrick Stewart performance.
Well, it's a weird movie, and actually, if you like a cult film, it's one to watch at least once.
It's a movie I've always said.
It has some bodies, like totally turning into jelly and stuff. It's pretty great.
I like what it's trying to be. It's a movie I've always thought is something that should be remade because I think there's
vampires.
There's good ideas in there. I've never read the book. Great title though.
What's weird is that's an author I like. I read a lot of his nonfiction, Colin Wilson, but yeah, as a title, Space Vampires. Jeez, was that a placeholder that just ended up? Well, we'll go ahead. We'll keep it.
If anything, you'd expect the book to be called Life Force and the movie to be called Space Vampires.
Yes.
That feels like a studio note. Just call it Space Vampires. We don't want to bury the lead on this thing. Just call it Boobs. That's actually really. Okay, so they go off with the truck while Cully stays behind. Cully does hear a dog being murdered.
Well, it's Jeffrey Lewis, whatever his character's
name is Mike Ryerson.
Mike Ryerson watches over the cemetery, which is why they're meeting there, and he leaves his dog behind.
Any relation to Needle-Nosed Ned Ryerson from Groundhog Day?
That's what I'm hoping.
We're in kind of the same area, right? Northeast, small town. I don't know.
Oh my god, it could work.
Punxsutawney, Salem's Lot. Like it's not
Ned.
got to be one of the all-time great tiny character roles in something is
his I was there too with Matt Gorley where he talked about it because he was just like, I got to know how the process works because you had to repeat the scene over and over again with small changes, but you had to keep your beats the same and all that. Yeah. So it was like, everything was calculated. The way he'd put his hands up, it had to be the same, and he had to get his pitch right on everything.
Phil Connors?
Phil Connors? Yeah. Ned Ryerson.
Got the shingles so bad I almost missed graduation. The great Stephen Tobolowsky, a guy who I guarantee we will see at some point when we get into when he's acting because he's in everything.
He's in everything. Yeah. I can't remember. Oh, God, what was I watching just a week ago? I was like, God, there he is again. Oh, is he in Basic Instinct?
I think he, I mean.
Yes, he is. He has a small part in it.
It's one of those things where it's like, going, I don't remember him, but he's got to be in it. Like,
yeah.
I know Newman's in it.
Yep, Wayne Knight. He was there.
Yeah. Because I think he's getting all hot and bothered when she's uncrossing and crossing her legs.
Yeah. Do you buy that story where she said, I didn't think that they were going to film that?
Brendan, not for a second do I believe that story because she saw where a camera was pointed and she knew she wasn't wearing underwear. So
that's correct.
I'm sorry, Sharon Stone. I don't buy it. Just like I don't buy her story about when she went in for necessary surgery and they accidentally gave her breast implants. I also don't believe that. I'm sorry. That just happened. And then 2, you just thought, well, I'll keep him in there.
The surgeon, see, what happened was there was an icy patch that the surgeon didn't see. He slipped.
Whoops.
And before you know it, there's silicone right in there.
It's just like, Jesus, Sharon Stone. Nobody would think, I wouldn't think less of her if she just, well, number one, she doesn't have to say anything if she didn't want to. And 2, to say that makes me be like, oh, Jesus.
Just fess up, lady. Just fess up.
I have heard several not amazing stories about her. So,
she was never in Amazing Stories, so I think you have your wires crossed.
She was on the less popular, not Amazing Stories. These stories won't astound you.
Why are you watching? We're not sure.
It's all pretty mundane stuff. So anyway, we hear the dog get killed. We see its body later. That's Ryerson's dog. Meanwhile, he's waiting to see that his wife is cheating on him. And meanwhile, Ben has met up with Mr. Burke at the bar. And this is where they're talking about all the creepy goings on at the Marston house and what Ben has come back to write the book about.
Yeah, he basically is like, do you believe in the supernatural? And old teacher guy is like, well, I don't know, really. And then why are you writing about the Marston house? He goes, well, when I was a kid, I went in there on a dare and I saw the ghost of the dude who supposedly haunts it, and I've never gotten it out of my head, and I feel that is an evil place.
Yeah. Well, because that's the thing where it's like, you think something evil, he's like, well, no, maybe there's something about the house that draws evil people to it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe so. Meanwhile, Bonnie is trying to get Crockett to come over and do her in her own bed.
Yeah.
Which she specifically says gets her particularly hot.
Yeah.
I don't
that, 1979 TV audiences.
That's right. But to be fair, this guy's a huge piece of shit. I don't feel that bad that she's cheating on him. Like,
no, that's certainly not the case. But I know what you're going to have a problem with in a minute or two. And it is actually good that it's there because it does show there are no innocent parties in any of this stuff.
Right. It's
because she does something real low in just a minute or so.
Yes, exactly. Let's see. So then we cut to Mark, who's practicing his speech in his room.
Yeah. And we see his room finally. And I am not lying when I say
insane, though.
When this movie left, like psychic impressions on me from watching it as a kid.
Yeah.
And certain scenes I can remember. But I remember his room in incredible detail. Like that room, when I watched it as a 10-year-old, I was like, that is my dream room. He has Frankenstein posters. He has horror masks. He has the Aurora Universal Monsters models. I'm just like, oh god.
It's not what's in the room is cool. I agree. The layout of the room is wild, though. It doesn't seem like a bedroom.
Well, that's true too. I thought how weird that the parents having
in cuts like into the walls with stuff.
Yeah.
And then he's got in the center of the room, there's a table and chairs that would be like for meetings.
Well, no, that's like sit down to play board games or D&D or that kind of thing.
I get but it's not even that kind. It's like a small little circular table and 2 chairs next. I don't know. It looks like he's about to interview somebody.
The thing that always strikes me about it is the parents apparently have been indulgent to some degree to let him have all that shit.
Yeah.
But also the walls are painted dark blood red.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn! I think also as a kid I was like, I want my room to look like that.
My childhood room was and still is, if you go to my parents' house where it's now my mom's office, it's painted TARDIS blue.
Okay, well, see, here's the thing. After we're done podcasting, it's going to take me a while, but I'm sure I can get out there probably before 8 or so.
There you go. Yeah.
Just let your parents know I'm coming, okay?
I specifically sought out the color of paint that was the closest to the TARDIS.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're not a nerd.
Nope. And it will also come as no shock that there were never any ladies in that room. Not a one, sir. Gee, never could figure out why. So anyway, but he says the Glick boys are coming over, and so when we do get the Glick boys coming over, they think he's kind of a weird dude with all the monster shit.
I mean, they're his friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're also kind of like, jeez, you are a freak.
It's how I feel people probably come into my apartment. Oh my god.
The Glick boys, one of them is Mark's age. Oh, I should be looking at the IMDb. And then the other one is his younger brother.
Danny's the older one. I can't remember the younger one's name.
Right. Is it Henry? No, or is that no, it's Danny. Henry's the father. Okay.
Yeah.
So Danny's the little one.
No, Danny's the older one.
Danny's the older one, and
Ralphie.
Thank you.
Yeah, played by Ronnie Scribner, who I see here in a cowboy hat.
Okay. Right. He's got a cowboy hat on in his IMDb picture.
Got a big old cowboy hat on.
Apparently, he did not act much further than this. He ends up around 82. He's out.
But he did do a 2-parter of Chip. So, what more do you need to do, man? I'm gonna go and assume the cowboy hat is from his one episode of Dallas. That's my guess.
I'm going to go with you on that.
That's my guess. Yeah. Sure
so they come in and they're rehearsing the stuff for the play, but almost immediately they're just looking at all the stuff in his room and going, "Man, why do you like this horror stuff so much?" He's like, "I just do. All right, Jesus."
This takes me back to a childhood of why do you like all those comic books?
Because I just do. Jesus.
Yeah, and also the line of. From his father, "When are you going to grow out of this?" is also that hit me.
Yeah,
it was kind of like, you're not still
his
reading
answer's
those.
like, I don't know, someday.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think he says probably soon, whatever. Like,
yeah, probably soon if you're going to keep on going like that bullshit.
Which is a total like, shut the fuck up, Dad. But yeah, as you're saying, they must have indulged because this shit costs money.
Yeah,
those are some quality horror, man. I wonder if this is also a little bit young Toby Hooper too.
Could be. I don't remember the character of Mark in the novel being like, well, I don't know. Didn't he read a lot of books on vampires and stuff?
Yeah, he was into horror stuff. I don't think he had the merch like this.
Right, yeah, okay, that's it.
As much. Toby Hooper died, right? Yes, he did in 2017.
R.I.P. Toby.
Yeah, that guy was great.
He gave us some great movies.
He gave us The Mangler, the aforementioned. I did not remember that he directed that 1995's The Mangler.
So he also gave us some not great movies, but still, I'll remember the good ones, Toby.
That actually, if you look at his IMDb, it's kind of more not great ones than great ones, but the great ones are pretty great.
The great ones are pretty great. Yeah. They stand out.
He also directed one episode of The Equalizer, so
wow.
That just stood out to me as sort of an oddity.
It was probably their Halloween episode. It was probably a spooky episode of The Equalizer.
It's one of the ones where Edward Woodward's like, "Oh, for the love of God."
I'm not saying it was a ghost, but it may have been a ghost.
I also like that he has 2 separate feature films where he is credited, but it is also noted he was replaced during production.
Yeah. That's never a good sign.
And also, there might be a third one, because I am kind of on board with the theory that Spielberg really directed Poltergeist, because I've seen Poltergeist, and that is such a Spielberg movie. Some people refute it. Some people are like, oh yeah, he was whispering in his ear the whole time. I don't know.
Let's call it a collaboration and
It's
split
definitely,
the difference.
there's a lot of Spielberg DNA in that movie, though. A ton.
Boy. You went a place I don't want you to ever
He got
go
a hold
again.
of the negative, and it got pretty ugly in there, is all I know.
You shone the blue light, the ultra light on it, and you're like, oh, God.
What happened to this 35mm print of Poltergeist? Spielberg was in here earlier. I don't know what he got up to.
Got his DNA all over it. But I agree.
Yeah.
But we'll call it a collab.
We're not doing ghost movies, so we can't do Poltergeist, although that might be a mini-series somewhere down the line.
Such a damn good movie.
Oh, it's so good. And I'm not even a ghost movie guy necessarily, but that one I do really enjoy.
I saw that one at an age and in a circumstance where it actually scared me, which is something that almost never happens with horror movies. Because I'm just not scared by them. I know it's all fake, but I was a kid. I was alone in a house. I watched it on VHS. I did not see it in the theater. And it scared me.
I was a very scared kid. I was scared of a lot of stuff, and that movie did scare me as a kid. Not so much now. And now people talk about like people. Actually,
well, if I'm not mistaken, because I could be wrong, but the Don Knotts character in The Ghost and Mr. Chicken was actually based on you, right?
Weirdly so, even though I wasn't born for decades. Yeah, I was.
Ghost and Mr. Chicken, a favorite of mine, and that one we would have to cover in a Ghost spinoff podcast.
We'd also have to do Hold That Ghost, one of my favorites with Abbott and
Hold That Ghost.
There's a ton. There's actually a ton of, especially there's a lot of ghost comedies back in the
day. There's a ton. That's a fertile ground.
Was Bob Hope the Ghost Breakers? Was it?
The Ghost Breakers, indeed.
Yeah, that's a good one. Anyway, we're never going to get to the end of this. So they, meanwhile, the movers now are offloading the crate, and Ryerson keeps going, God, it's cold to the touch.
Cold.
It's a headboard, and it's like, what do you want to do? Open it up? No, we probably shouldn't open it up. Anyway, let's just load it on the truck. Then we cut to, did they just take a trip to the woods, or is this them actually walking home? The Glick boys having left.
They did. They're doing a shortcut through the woods to go home, because one of them does say, it's like, I really wish we hadn't done this shortcut, and the other one's like, it's all right.
They are the darkest, scariest woods available on Stage 9.
Indeed.
Yeah, this is where it does feel very TV, but it's this actually, I will say, of any of the stage bound stuff, looks probably the best, because he does keep it very dark. Like, he really is trying to hide a lot of it. We mainly just see some sort of plants and stuff. It's still not totally convincing, but anyway, the wind kicks up as the boys are separated, and Ralphie turns around, and suddenly there's a person there. Ah!
Yeah, a person in a dark suit.
Man, these 70s
Danny takes off.
Yeah. I will say these 70s TV movie jump scares don't land as well today.
No, they still feel TV bound.
Yeah, like this is because the music always goes wah, wah, wah. And you're like, no, that didn't scare me.
The score, as I mentioned, is bad, and it's because there's just two. It has two modes, and one is everything's pleasant in Pleasantville kind of stuff behind normal people talking scenes. But anytime the Marson house is shown, even before we have a sense of foreboding or what's going on, it just hits like the bow, 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 bow. And you're like, okay, all right, this is a hack work job. Or even worse, they just took it off of pre-existing things. Like, cut that theme out of that, use that for here.
It does have that sound. I want to see if there's a credited composer on this. But anyway, suddenly Ralphie's taken by someone. A vampire? Well, no, not a vampire, because we know they're moving the vampire.
Yeah. And that also means that the dog was not killed by the vampire either.
No. So anyway, Cully does see Crockett walking up. I love Fred Willard's "I'm gonna get laid" walk here that he does here. Like, yep, da, da, da. He is doing this like bouncing along, gonna have sex.
And I like the fact that Zunda, he's that blank-eyed furious. It's not like he's like he's sitting there going, "Yep, expected it," and he's just drinking a beer again. He's like, "Well, let me go get the shotgun."
By the way, the composer of this movie is Henry Sukman.
You're always supposed to start that off with the great.
Well, this guy, I will say, very experienced TV composer. This is the man who brought us the score for Dr. Kildare. Also, Daniel Boone, Gentle Ben, High Chaparral, Bonanza.
He wrote the score for Bonanza?
Yeah.
Wow, all right.
Yeah, I mean, so stuff. Tales of Wells Fargo.
Yeah, but it's another thing of this guy is one of those solid pros,
TV
but doesn't
stuff.
necessarily mean he has a feel for this particular material.
Oh, he gave us Peyton Place. High Noon, The Clock Strikes Noon Again, the TV.
Oh boy, the TV sequel, yeah.
The title just makes me. The Clock Strikes Noon Again. It's happening again, not again.
Why does the same stuff keep happening to the same guy?
Yeah. This Gary Cooper going. That's the same thing happened to the same guy twice. No, it's not Gary Cooper.
He looked at the townspeople. You gonna stick around this time?
Nah.
No, still just me. Still just me.
We're done again.
Still just me.
Oh, okay, wait a minute. Oh, no. Hold on. They took a different approach. Sorry. Now I'm obsessed with this. I hate to derail us. Peter Fonda is the star of it, by the way.
Okay.
Years after his father rid the town, Will Kane Jr. arrives.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and his father has been murdered by the sons of, yes, the villain of that movie, Frank Miller, who waited 20 years for their revenge. Kane Jr. now has to fight. So it's the sons of the hero and the son of the villain from the first movie doing the same thing. Oh, I'm sure.
And you've already ordered the DVD because I guarantee you that's not available on Blu-ray.
That's not. I don't think this is available anywhere, man. This doesn't seem to be like Amazon.
Maybe it's one of those print-on-demand ones where it's like, if somebody wants it, we'll make one.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually the third one because lest we forget, High Noon Part 2, The Return of Will Kane, starring Lee Majors.
Jesus. But good casting.
Yeah. Lee Majors and David Carradine's your villain there. Wow. And then they just straight up remade High Noon with Tom Skerritt.
Jesus.
Oh, God, why would you touch High Noon, man? It's such a
I know.
perfect.
Why would you do it? Why would you make a Casablanca TV series?
Yeah, these are kind of ones where you go like, I don't know, man. These things are so iconic. Maybe you just never do them again.
Yeah. We should call a moratorium. It's like, that's a classic film. Leave it alone.
When it's just like, yeah, I mean, like, oh, man, we're really going to bring a new spin to High Noon. It's about as, like, perfect a Western as you get in terms of just its simplicity, right? Like, it's just like,
right.
That is a great, perfect encapsulation
and there's nothing
of a movie
new
Western.
To say about it either.
No,
it's just going to be a new faces doing the same story.
Don't you want to see it with Tom Skerritt? I like Tom Skerritt just fine, but he's not exactly a Gary Cooper.
I will say that Tom Skerritt has a lot of nice things to say about you, so you should probably be a little more political.
You're right. I forgot about those wonderful things Tom Skerritt said about me. So anyway, the Glick parents call Mark's parents, and they're like, "Did
our boys are late? Where are our boys?"
I don't know. And then almost immediately after they hang up, Danny stumbles into the backyard. Now, they're immediately worried, I would think, drunk. I mean, he's like a teenage kid. Seems like he maybe got his hands
like 11 or 12. It's a little early to think that this is high school pranks. They're like junior high.
Are they? I don't know how old they're supposed to be.
I think they're supposed to be like 12 or 13.
They read as older. That's true because he's not yet 15 to play James at 15. So
there you go.
Even though he was 19 years old in this.
All right.
Lance Kerwin was 19, who played at least who played Mark. I don't know about this guy who plays
Lance Kerwin was so ubiquitous in the 70s. I can't even tell you how
that's
familiar his face is to me. He was in everything.
I'm always fascinated by these like young or kid actors. Like if they find a good one, they'll just put him in everything. It's just like then you have your run as a kid actor, and then they're kind of done with you after that, for the most part. Let's see, Brad Savage was 14. This is a 14-year-old stumbling home. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Another
maybe
14-year-old.
He could be one of those problem kids. I don't know.
True.
Yeah. So anyway, he stumbles home. They're like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And he just passes out. Which then cuts to one of the darker things that actually does get by as a TV thing, and I'm surprised they got it, which is Straker bringing the wrapped up Ralphie Glick into the basement here and like delicately unwrapping him like a present for his master. I like this a lot.
Yeah, this is one of the creepiest things. And if you're going along with I haven't seen this before, or I never read the book, there's the question of, okay, what's he doing? But he's bringing in this black plastic wrap thing, lays it on the table, unwraps it, and there's a boy on the inside. You're like, wow, that's dark.
And what we also see is that the crate that the movers brought into the basement is just exploded into wooden pieces.
Yeah.
I also love that. The idea that Barlow just like burst out of this thing.
Yeah. Well, what I think is kind of great is also the question that's hanging over it, because he left these explicit instructions that the guys who were going to move it in, they were to put it in the basement, then they were to padlock all the exits.
Yes.
And I actually think it's like, well, I think that's actually Straker going, I have to keep my master in.
Yes.
It's not about I want to get. So I think Barlow is someone that Straker can barely keep in check, which I do like.
Well, because it's like we want him running around, but if this dude wakes up, he's just gonna tear this town apart, man. And this has got to be a little bit more subdued a thing here if we want to.
Yeah, so I like the fact that he's very upset when he sees the abandoned padlocks and stuff, because they were so freaked out they did not stick around to do the padlocking.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Then we get into talk about somebody exploding in a room. Here comes Cully with his shotgun.
Yes.
And my favorite piece of costuming, Fred Willard's silk boxers.
Which are commented on.
Yes! I know. I love that's not just like a weird 70s thing. It's like, ooh, you and your fancy boxer shorts.
Yeah. You get Cully, Mr. Zunda. You get him. I mean, he does the scene very well, because
oh my God.
Going, Jesus, he is about to blow them both away.
But
he's like going, go ahead, get up out of bed. No, get up out of bed. I'm gonna, you come over here. You stay there, Bonnie. You stay right there. And he's like going, oh, those are some nice shorts. Those are really nice. Where'd you get those?
One of my favorite things, and it's very, I don't know if it's very hard, but it's certainly something people don't do, which is real crazy. Not cackling movie madman crazy, but like determined psychopath crazy.
Yeah, that's what I was calling like the Deadeye crazy, where it's so interior that you're not a giggling maniac or furious. You're just have decided in your head someone's going to die tonight.
Well, and particularly it's not when he takes Crockett out to the living room, and he's like, "Yeah, no, grab the barrel of that gun.
Yeah.
Bring it up to your head."
Before that though, you gotta mention what she does.
Oh,
so when he
this is when I was like, "Fuck you."
She goes, "It's not what you think. It's not what you think." He's like, "Oh, really? What is it?" And she goes, "He raped me."
Yeah. To which I'm going like,
broke in.
That's better, lady. Now he's just gonna blow this guy's head off immediately, right?
But he knows it's a lie. You can also see he knows it's a lie.
He does, but I'm just trying to think like
such a disgusting thing for her to have even thought of. Like, I'm innocent. But you should kill him because he was trying to rape me.
Yeah, it is just like that. What I'm saying, like in her mind about where this is gonna lead, she's like, no, he's a monster. Kill him, basically.
Yeah,
she would be.
This will save me.
She seemed like she would be cool if he just shot Crockett right there, because at least she's off the hook.
It could just be that she does know how dangerous he is.
Yeah,
and her brain's going to anything that could possibly save her.
Because I feel like when Fred Willard's like, holy shit, I was doing your wife, but it was consensual. Christ, like
yeah, it's like, no, I don't know what she's saying. It's not like that at all.
Yeah, it's been going on for months. Like the idea of confessing
once he gets out in the living room, he's like, go ahead Go ahead and grab that. Just no, grab the muzzle there.
He's like, now close your eyes, and he pulls back the hammers on the shotgun, and then he pulls the trigger, and the gun is empty. And Crockett books it out of there, except for he's instantly grabbed by a vampire.
It is instant. Like, he gets out of there, and he's still in the shorts. Like, he doesn't get dressed. He runs to his car, and then it's just like, vampire.
Yeah. You just see the clawed-fingered Nosferatu hand grab him. And you're like, oh shit. Well, so ends Fred Willard in this.
Well, we do see him one more time, but he doesn't have a lot to do.
Sadly, no. Yeah, I was oddly quiet in that scene.
He was oddly quiet, and not nearly as funny as he is in Best in Show.
No, I know. I was just... you're right, because it is like, as soon as he showed up, I was laughing already, because I was like, hey, Fred Willard. This guy just kills me. He's so fucking funny in Anchorman, too, and like a side part.
He's funny in everything.
He was. The man was a genius. So, let's see here. Gun was empty. Meanwhile, Susan and Ben are back at the lake. Here's the thing. Maybe stop going to the lake so much if it's going to look this bad. Like,
it's like, you aren't teenagers. I assume there's places you could go, probably even to your room, Ben, where you could hook up. Stop going to the lake.
There is some kind of thing I kind of don't like about Ben Mears, where it almost feels like he's living out this teenage fantasy of making out with a pretty girl by the lake that he didn't get to do, maybe. It's all subtextual, but it just makes me go like, God, he just keeps taking this gal to the lake. He really is romancing her in this high school manner, even though they're adults. And he's got her by a few years, of course.
Yeah,
so he's just not like an
I can't remember what the difference
teenager.
Is in the book, but it is something like at least 10 years or something like that.
I think she's supposed to be in like 23, 24 maybe. Like,
well, she has gone through college and had a job in New York, so she is probably like 24, 25.
Yeah, mid-20s, and he's in like his mid-30s.
Yeah,
it's not meant to be creepy, but it is definitely like, I think there is I don't know, there is sort of a thing about like, I come back to the town, I'm now a famous writer-ish, and I got the prettiest girl in town, or whatever. Like,
he's living the high life, but it's not to be, my friend. It's not to be.
No, I do know where this goes.
Spoilers.
Yeah. So they're back at the lake, but they're only back at the lake so that they can find Crockett's body in his car.
Yeah,
because he is like, Crockett, what the hell are you doing? Oh, he's dead as he falls onto the steering wheel here.
Yeah, he's just been sat in the driver's seat, still just in his boxers, dead. And then they're like, hey, man, are you all right? You drunk? What's going on?
There's something so creepy about that was done rather than trying to hide the body or bury it or anything. It's just to be like, yeah, we'll just put him in his car and leave it here.
Yeah, and the whole thing that's brought up later of like, well, I heard two cars. One was maybe a truck. Yeah. And then I heard one drive away.
Right, because we get our constable out here questioning, and he immediately was like, "Yeah, what were you doing, miss?"
I had my man Weasel watching you, but he apparently didn't know this was gonna happen.
Mm-hmm. He immediately is so suspicious of Ben Mears, and is just like,
"I know that never makes much sense."
Did you kill this guy for no reason?
I don't know. There's something about a writer.
Yeah.
I don't trust writers.
And they're always cooking up them stories.
And writing.
Something about it I don't like. They know all those words. Seems fishy.
Got my eye on you.
Seems awful fishy. Meanwhile, Ralphie Glick appears at Danny's window in full-on vampire mode. It's all foggy outside, and there's scratches.
If there's one thing this TV movie got so very right, this is great. I mean, yeah, it's still a TV movie.
It is.
Yes, these are practical effects that aren't amazing, but
this part,
the atmosphere of this is the creepiest vampire stuff.
This I really like. This was the same scene when I saw this where I went like, this still works. This is still eerie, even if it is just a kid on wires and a window.
Well, and when it's the other brother's turn and he actually is talking to Mark, and that'll be in part 2.
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's just creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
You have just this sort of lit up fog and a child appearing floating outside of a window with the white eyes and the fangs and just sort of slowly clawing at the glass like, hey, let me in.
Yeah,
Oh,
and we see him open the window, but then it cuts to the hospital. And the doctors are like, well, we don't really know what's going on with him. He seems to be anemic, but we don't really have a lot of answers for you, Mr. and Mrs. Glick.
Well, that's fine.
It's vampire. Well, you're doing your best, Doc.
By the way, you know that toupee isn't fooling anyone, right?
What?
I don't even.
Toupee?
What's that word? I'm not even familiar with the term.
Never even heard of such a thing. Ooh, preposterous. Meanwhile, the sheriff is poking around the woods with Ben Mears, and it's daytime now, and they find a piece of black cloth hung on a tree. That's stuck on a tree branch, and Ben is immediately like, you know that Mr. Straker, he always wears a black suit.
And the constable, for once, is like, huh, you may be on to something.
Maybe I should look into that.
Even if you're a writer.
Yeah, for a writer, it's all right, though.
I'll take it.
So he immediately goes to question Straker, who's wearing a gray suit. And I like that he's just like, where's that black suit you're always wearing?
I have 2 black suits. They're both at home. I need to get them dry cleaned. Is there a problem?
I'll tell you, Constable, I have many looks for different fashion settings.
Do you perhaps need to see my evening chiffon?
I have
what is it that you need to look at in my closet?
I have a lovely blue number for cocktail parties.
If you find a feather boa, I'm not even going to lie. It's mine.
I'm adventurous with my fashion. I'm not ashamed to admit. And by the way, if you do hear about any cocktail parties, do let me know.
I am no longer invited to hang out with Vincent Price. Something terrible went wrong, dreadfully wrong. I don't like to talk about it.
So he's like, I'll bring them by the sheriff's station, my black suits, if you must have them, yes.
But he is playing totally, it's canny, but he's so, of course, cool. He does just say, he goes, am I being suspected of something? And he goes, he goes, the boy's disappearance. He goes, that's right. And he goes, probably because I'm an outsider, I understand. You know, he's basically going, look, I know what you're after. Sure, I'll send you my suits.
Oh,
he's just like,
is this about
bulletproof?
Is this about me preferring the company of men?
Yeah.
I see how
I
it is.
understand a small town. You're all very close-minded, but, you know.
I'm not gay. I'm European.
Everyone is bi in Europe. Come on.
Get with
Doesn't
the program.
mean I don't also like a little bit of the ladies.
Get with the program, Constable.
You're so hung up. You're totally square.
So Ben goes to question the doctor about the autopsies of the people who have both Larry and the Glick boy, I believe.
Sure. No, he's not dead yet.
The first Glick boy is dead, though.
Oh, the first Glick boy.
Isn't that what it is, or is there somebody else dead? No, it's got to be those two. He asked about 2 autopsies anyway, but he's questioning. He goes, well, I don't know what to tell you other than it seems like they died of some kind of anemia, right? What's the term he uses? Like extreme? It's not extreme anemia.
No, it's pernicious.
Pernicious, that's it.
That stuck out to me too. He goes, pernicious anemia.
It's like, is that a thing? No.
Hold on, I've got Google right here. Pernicious anemia. Yeah. Keep going, John.
I feel like it's not a thing.
It is a thing. First thing that came up. Pernicious anemia is a type of vitamin B12 anemia.
Yeah.
It's also called Addison's anemia.
Oh.
But I prefer pernicious.
Is it fatal?
And
like sudden onset and or
untreated, pernicious anemia can cause heart and nerve damage. So it could lead to like a heart attack, which actually I think at one point what the doctor says, this looks like it could have been a heart failure brought on by pernicious anemia.
Yeah. I mean, did you see the life Larry Crockett was leading? Come on, we were all expecting a heart attack sooner or later.
Rumor has it he was wearing red silk underpants.
That is true. Nobody bothered to question that he was in his car dead in red silk boxers. What was this guy up to out here? Well, because I do like also where Ben, he's just like, well, what do you mean? Larry Crockett died at the lake. And this is where Ben's like, well, it's also possible he died somewhere else and was brought to the lake. And I love the doc just being like, I guess.
Jeez. It does take a writer to come up with something that far-fetched.
I mean, the terrible police and medical work from all involved here, of course.
It's a small Maine town. Ooh, and I lost this every listener from Maine.
Well, I was enjoying the Campbell and Jones program till he said that thing about my home state. Didn't care for it, not one bit. I have half a mind to write him a letter.
Oh, they're right on. Oh, those accents are right on. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's like everyone I know talks like that. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sometimes that is better.
R.I.P. to the great Fred Gwynn.
Fred Gwynn, one of my favorites of all time.
Oh, he's amazing. So anyway, and then he's like, and also, keep your hands off my daughter, pal.
It is pretty much like that. It's like, hey, again, you two got to calm down. Like, wait a minute. We're talking about adults.
Yeah.
The dad can't say jack shit about it. I wish Ben Mears had turned around and gone, sorry, man, but I'm giving it to her. Oh, yeah. And I'm giving it to her good.
Mm-hmm.
Constable, arrest this man.
So now Ralphie comes back, another creepy vampire entrance. So this time he's at the hospital window. And this time we actually see the window open and him come in and him bite Danny.
Yeah. And this is the one that does him in.
Yeah, because this terrified nurse comes into the room and just finds him, and he's all contorted up on the bed and like, yeah.
Yeah.
He's really dead. And she screams and drops this tray.
You would too, man. Don't judge.
Meanwhile, Straker does bring his black suits to the sheriff, and he's like, as promised, here, those black suits you wanted to see. What were you going to do with them? And he says something about, I got to send them up to the FBI there. Up in Bangor. And he's like, great, just as long as I get him back.
Yes, those are the only clothing I own. I will be spending the entire weekend wearing my robes.
I'll
be waiting for those suits in my kimono.
Be wearing a pair of red silk boxers I recently procured. Red silk boxers, you say? Yes.
I'm sure that's merely a coincidence. Moving on.
They're quite popular these days. Once again, Constable, get with the times. But of course,
do you swing, Constable, as in, cut loose?
You seem like a rather button-up fellow.
I will not be inviting you to my key party.
That's the kind of stuff they're worried about.
Straker's key party. That is not something I want to see.
It's a formal invitation to Straker's key party.
Get with it or get gone.
Bring your own beverage and partner. The
only rule is there are no rules. The fact that this is, of course, filmed and set in the 70s, I couldn't help but think of that kind of stereotypical nonsense.
Oh, because it so has that vibe that
the small town decadence, yeah,
that could break out. It does feel like this is either going to go vampire or hard into swinging. So the constable checks the piece of cloth and sees there's no damage on the suits, and he's like, must be that crazy rider.
Mm-hmm.
And that turned a little Boston at the end there. But Ryder.
Yeah.
So then Cully is driving Bonnie around in his truck, and she's got a pretty serious shiner there from where he obviously smacked her about.
Yeah.
And Straker watches them go by, and he's like, he senses something there.
I think it's just more like, that they will be tasty food for the master.
Yeah. Wouldn't mind serving up a wife beater to him, scumbag. I may be a vampire's assistant, but at least I'm not smacking ladies around.
Am I right?
Come on, movie. Come
Who's
on,
with me?
Yeah. And he goes back into his shop and puts up the opening soon sign in the shop window. And it faded to black, and I thought that was the breaking point. So that's where I stopped.
That was your breaking point.
Well, because I thought maybe that was where they left it with like opening.
It's
soon.
definitely a commercial break, but I think it was probably the next to last. Yeah, that was probably the last.
Although then they came back for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. So this
was
there is more to part one, but John will have to catch up, so we'll call it there.
Yeah, we'll call it there. But just based on this first part, absolutely check out Salem's Lot.
I know, and I'll also say, we watched this whole hour and a half, part one, and there is very little full horror in it, which just is a testament to A, again, source material, B, performances, and Tobe Hooper's direction. Part one really doesn't give you much of the good stuff, but when it does, it's very effective. But that's pretty good. I mean, that's impressive that we watched that and didn't feel like we got cheated because all we had was a couple of vampire children floating outside of a window, or one vampire kid floating around outside of a window.
Where the vampires at?
Yeah, part two, we got a lot more. But
and you did have to, much like in the 70s, you did have to wait a week to find out what happened.
Yeah.
There was a week in between these two episodes.
My parents were idiots. They're like, all right, we'll let you finish it.
Let's see, he's terrified by the first part. Yeah, we'll let him finish it.
I never ended up with nightmares, but again, it did stick in my head. I remember this stuff. It's crazy.
Well, I do distinctly, when we get to Barlow, that is definitely burned in my brain what he looks like, for sure.
Reggie Nalder.
Yeah. Oh, the great Reggie Nalder, as always.
Yeah, again, you always have to put it in front of there.
Yeah.
So join us next week for part two of what we're already calling a real treat at the end of the 70s.
It's all vampires from here to the end now. So
as it always should be.
Yeah. So anyway, that's gonna do it for this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters. I'm John Campbell.
I'm Brendan Jones.
And remember, there are such things as monsters.
No, I don't believe that. No.